We're getting ready to start our second session for today's Dr. Ron Walters National Town Hall for 2017. Let's give Miss Audrey Mabins, the keyboardist, a hand who was, thank you, being pleasing to our ears. Let's give Fellowship Chapel Events Planning and Jackson 5-Star Catering a hand for being pleasing to our tummies. And I didn't do this the first session, but I have to thank my peeps, you know, the people that you can count on. You can't count on everybody, amen? But the ones you can count on, don't take them for granted. I'm getting feedback over here. Don't take them for granted. You know, ladies, your girls, the midnight hour, the ones who gonna help lick the envelopes and fold the pages and go make the errands and run to the dollar store and get the gift bags. And fellas, you got your boys, your ride or dies, and come on, we got to go make this run. Those are your people, and you know who you are. I want to thank Reverend Anthony's assistant, Antoinette McGarvin, who is my assistant also. Also Rhonda Bostic and Karen Brown and Berlin Brown and so many other volunteers who step up when I call, when we call, when Reverend Anthony puts out the call. The volunteers, the Fellowship Chapel family, all of you, just give yourselves a hand. I hate to do this, but audio, visual, whatever it is, it's really like, woo, get my ears back here kind of thing. So you might want to come help me out. So again, Monica Anthony, okay. It's not doing it anymore. Yeah, there we go. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so Monica Anthony, director of the Freedom Institute founded by Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony. We are here today doing the Dr. Ron Walters National Town Hall. For those of you who don't know who Dr. Ron Walters is, there is a bio about him and his picture inside of your program. And a lot of times you don't know who people are. You think they're still alive. He's deceased. He was a renowned, phenomenal intellectual being, scholar, author, just has a remarkable story and background. And Reverend Anthony, one of those people who seems to be drawn to those people, the Howard Thurmans of the world and the Dr. Earl Hendersons of the world and the Professor Herb Boyds of the world. He just, you know, I guess iron sharpeth iron, as they say. And so he connected with Dr. Walters several years ago, and he was one of our advisory board members for the Freedom Institute and would actively participate in our annual town halls, which we would do under the auspices of the Freedom Institute and our Freedom Weekend events. And so upon his passing in 2010, Reverend Anthony thought, what better way to acknowledge him and remember him than to name this town hall in his honor. And we had his widow to come, and I think she talked to Reverend Anthony this year for keeping his legacy alive. The legacy is what they say once you're gone, how you impacted people so that they still continue to talk about you and do things in your honor once you've left here. And he has a rich, profound legacy, and so we honor him by having this annual Dr. Ron Walters National Town Hall discussion. So I'm going to bring up Reverend Anthony, but before I do, just to give you a little brief history, director of the Freedom Institute, we've been around for over 16 years and doing what Reverend Anthony coined as edutainment, education for your head, entertainment for your heart. We've done some of everything with some of everybody, from brain trusts on the deep end to throw your hands in the air concerts at the music hall, trying to reach the totality of the person in the community. And we are the Freedom Institute for Economic, Social Justice, and People Empowerment. And we hope that we have empowered, and we have empowered hundreds of thousands of people through these formats over the last 16 years. And so we're going into session 2. So for those of you who just got here or been somewhere for the last 50 years, in 1967 in the city of Detroit, the people rebelled. They were upset, they were oppressed, they were tired of the inequality, the injustices that were going on around them. And like a lot of other cities around the country, Detroit rebelled. And so the film came out this summer, and whatever you think about it, that can be discussed at the appropriate time. But we thought we'd ask the question, where we been, where we at, where we going? And so we've assembled some great minds. We had a fantastic session this morning. If you were here, give me some dap and love on that. It was awesome with Professor Boyd and many of the people who birthed through that rebellion, Wayne County Community District and New Detroit and Shrine of the Black Madonna. So their leadership was here, and Sheila Cockrell and others and Keith Bennett, who were either in that mix then or came through that mix. And so they lent their history and their connection and so forth to that. And so it was an excellent turnout and response. We had this great lunch, and we're going to go into session 2 with the millennials. I'm going to come back and say something about them shortly. At this time, I'm going to ask that we get started because I have a run of the show and I sticks to it. Even though folks try to take me off my square, I'm not coming off my square. So I would like to ask the founder of the Freedom Institute, the illustrious Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony, to come and reconvene us for this, our second session.
Thank you, Ms. Anthony. Let me thank all of you, and let's give our panelists for the first session a good hand, big hand. They did an outstanding job. And we thank Brother Herb Boyd for his message this morning. As I said, it was like running water, just dripping, the knowledge that he was putting down. And I wish we had had more time, but we just don't have more time. And you're going to be saying the same thing when Earl finishes and when that panel finishes. You never have enough time, but Martin Luther King said years ago, the time is always ripe to do what's right. So use the time that you have and the time that you have it to do something that's right. Amen? And so we're going to use this time, and we're very pleased to come. As Monica mentioned, Dr. Walters was a phenomenon. We just do this in his honor. He was a personal counseling advisor for me. I could call him, and he would call me and ask me what I thought about certain things, and I appreciated about this big guy calling me, but that's the kind of guy he was, and I appreciate that. And I'm just going to claim Herb and Earl as our new counselors and advisors, and I'm going to put y'all as advisors on the Freedom Institute, which means I'll send y'all. I'm going to send you formal letters thanking you for your acceptance to be as political advisors on the Freedom Institute. So I'm going to be adding your names onto our station there. If that's all right. Don't y'all think that'd be a good thing? They should be on there. Thank you. I'm so glad you asked me. I appreciate that very much. But at any rate, we're here today. And let me say this. This is conversation, this is intellectual, this is insightful, this is historic, this is current, and this is destiny bound. And this is a Saturday. A lot of folk don't come to get this kind of stuff. But we need to come to get this kind of stuff because it feeds us. It feeds our souls and our spirits and our minds. And when we have people with the kind of knowledge that we bring to the table, shame on us if we don't claim it and redeem it and use it because we need it. And that's why we do what we do. And I want to thank those folk who have helped us through our sponsors, such as Chemical Maze, Chemical, which is one of our senior sponsor. I want to thank Dr. Curtis Ivory and WC3D, Wayne County Community College, a co-sponsor, and also Wayne State University, a co-sponsor, and UAW Ford, Jimmy Settles, a co-sponsor. Let's give all of them a hand, all those entities that have helped us. That's why you are able to have this lunch, and we're able to supply certain things, do the PR, print up these materials, use this beautiful facility, and we don't take that for granted. And so we're very glad about that. This is also our men's weekend here at Fellowship. I want to invite you all now early to come to church tomorrow if you ain't going nowhere else. The head of the Pan-African Orthodox Church, the Shrines of the Black Madonna, Jeremoji Menelik Kimante, coming from Houston. He's here already, so he got ahead of the hurricane. And so he's here, and he will be preaching tomorrow in service, 9:30. You're invited to come. And we're going to honor, through recognition, Wayne County Community College, the New Detroit Incorporated, and the Shrines of the Black Madonna. Why? Because they're celebrating 50 years. 50 years ago, out of the ashes emerged New Detroit. That's how the first major urban coalition in the country, New Detroit, came up out of that. 50 years ago was the birth of the community college, later to become what we know today as Wayne County Community College. 50 years ago, the Shrine of the Black Madonna had the unveiling of the Black Madonna here in Detroit, which changed the paradigm for a whole lot of churches and communities of religiosity 50 years ago. You may recall that statue that's on the corner of Chicago and Linwood at Sacred Heart. That statue of Jesus was white. But the next day after the rebellion, someone painted it black. And the church has kept it that color since that time. And even when it was starting to fade, they didn't paint it white, they painted it black. I guess there's some truth to power in that kind of a situation. So it was real, but it changed the paradigm here. All things coming out, and even Focus Hope came out of the ashes 50 years ago. And so it was a state legislature that gave $1 million to fund the college, the growth of it, and New Detroit gave $300,000 on top of that, which led to the founding and the growth of Wayne County Community College. And Dr. Curtis Ivory has done a tremendous job with that college. We give him a hand for the work that he has done. And so we're pleased to be here today. I want to get right to it in terms of our afternoon session. This is being streamed. It's being Facebooked, or whatever the appropriate digital, technological terminology is. In other words, if you ain't here, you can see it on the line somewhere. That's what I'm saying, basically. And so, say what? And you can go to fellowshipchapel.org, and you can text your people. If you have your cell phones, tell them to go to fellowshipchapel.org, and they can pick it up live, the discussion that is getting ready to take place. And what we want is for the millennials, for the movement, and that's who you are, from whatever community of thought you come from, how to engage, what we need to be doing, what you going to do relative to moving us further down the line. Everybody got a role in this. Everybody can do something. And so can't nobody sit this one out. We need everybody on board. And your idea is good. It ain't no better than mine. My idea ain't no better than yours. But if we put all our ideas together and we put all of our energies together, we can make something happen. And I just think that we need to come together and have this kind of discussion. And so I want to thank all of you, the panelists who have taken out this time to come here on Saturday. All of you are important people, and you can see the panel lined up from here. And I'm just going to stop here. And do you want me, or are you going to introduce Dr. Earl? Oh, yeah. I'm going to have Brother Teferi Brent, who used to be with, what was the name of the group? KRS-One? What was it? Maestro. And which was the other one? Okay, he used to be with somebody back in the day. I mean, and he's doing a great job. Let's give him a hand. He's going to introduce our special speaker, Brother Teferi Brent, who's the president and head of our Men's Christian Fellowship, also with Detroit 300, community activist in his own right and role, and a very good brother, millennials for the movement. Come on, Teferi.
Let's give God praise for my pastor, Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony. To be a great man, he's just such a humble man, so real, so down to earth. And this is what I appreciate and love about him most, is that he truly gets us. And he definitely gets young people, and he definitely understands black people and the necessity of having to fight and struggle for our liberation, education, and empowerment. So I always say, I didn't have the privilege of knowing Minister Malcolm personally. I didn't have the privilege of knowing Dr. King personally, but I have been blessed with the opportunity to live in the time of Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony. Let's give God praise for his leadership and his service. So I've been tasked with introducing my brother, and really, you really can't introduce this brother, right? I mean, I always say that great men like Dr. Henderson and Dr. Boyd and Dr. Anthony, you can't write a bio or a resume for their work. You really need to do a documentary on their lives. You know, these gentlemen are worthy of documentary. So Dr. Earl Henderson, as we well know, was born and raised in the city of Detroit. He comes from the Brewster Projects. He is the son of a loving mother and a loving family who helped nurture, raise, and develop him intellectually, spiritually, psychologically, and emotionally. He's also a graduate of Cass Tech University. Amen. Yeah, he's a graduate of Cass Tech University, but he has a very unique way of describing that experience. I wish you all could hear that one day. He is not just a scholar. He has written several manuals, several scholarly articles. He's well known throughout the world. He's a Guggenheim scholar, right? He's also a part of the Correlates of War, which is an elite group of intellectuals that deal with issues of war and war strategy. He is a graduate of Wayne State University, where he was also involved in a sit-in there in order to bring Africana studies to Wayne State University. He was there when they shut down the student union. Dr. Henderson was a part of that leadership team with Jessica and several others. He was also a part of the Black Action Movement, BAM, I think, 2 and 3, Dr. Henderson? Different iterations of it, 3 at University of Michigan. In fact, I was there with him in 87, and he was there from 84 and 87. 87 was when we brought Jesse, right, Dr. Henderson? Was it 87 when we brought Jesse Jackson up to University of Michigan? He was an activist at University of Michigan in 87. He was an activist at Wayne State. He was also amongst leadership in Save Our Sons and Daughters under the leadership of Mrs. Clementine Barfield, who raised us kind of in this work and in this movement. We consider her a mother. The brothers, his resume is outstanding. His bio is second to none. Again, he's not just a social critic, right? He's not just a talker, right? He's a doer. He hails in the spirit of W.E.B. Du Bois, right? Where he's a scholar and the activist. He not only thought about our struggle, but he also committed his theses and his theories and his ideals to application to ensure that our people continue to fight for liberation and the education of our community. So the brother is outstanding. He's a superb brother. He's a bona fide soldier, a servant of our community. He's a scholar. He's an excellent father. He's my friend. He's our son. Let's get on our feet and give God praise and acknowledge our brother, Detroit's own Dr. Earl Henderson.
Thank you, Brother Lamont. Thank you so much for that exceptionally generous introduction, Brother Teferi. It's a high praise coming from a brother who's dedicated so much of his still young life to so much in the name of Black liberation, community development, and faith, and the practice that reflects that faith. Ron Walters was a friend of mine. Ron Walters was the first, seeing him on television, the first I thought I might want to be a political scientist. He made it look so cool on PBS while he was talking about the Jesse Jackson campaign and talking about U.S. domestic policy. But what impressed me even more was his command of U.S. foreign policy. My interests were in international relations. Growing up in the Brewster Projects may not lend itself to a thesis on international relations, but my father's from St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, and my mother, who's from Birmingham, Alabama, they taught me from a very young age in the Brewster Projects that the world belonged to those who would study it, work in it, and affect change to make it better. Ron Walters not only made it look so cool, the way he challenged, the way he demonstrated his intellectual acumen, it's outstanding. I came to know him when Jesse came to the Brewster Projects in '84. Ron Walters was there, John Conyers was there. I was interested in both of them. I was more interested in Kim Fields because she was with them. So I saw Kim Fields, like, hey, how you doing? She wasn't too impressed or interested in me. Then after the brief presentation in one of the 6-story apartments, we had 14 stories of 6-story buildings. I lived in a row house. I didn't just live there. I was born. I was physically born in the Brewster Projects. But on this day, somebody suggested, why don't we go knock on some of them doors? And somebody in Jesse's entourage said, this the Brewster Projects, though. They said, anybody know? I said, no. So who gonna speak? So Earl said, Jesse, I'll take you. I said, right across there. That's Nellis Carr's house. Nellis and I were in elementary school. I know the folks, of course. I'm from here. And so they started following me. I go knock on Nellis's door. She's like, Earl, what? I said, I'd like you to meet Reverend Jesse. She's like, what? She just screaming. And then, of course, somebody's screaming the projects. Half the projects come out. And so when that happened, they had a nice exchange. Nellis has always been a wonderful sister. It's a shame she's passed on. We were in the first grade together. There's no reason for that sister not to be here now or to live a long life. So they had a good conversation. We walked out, said, where to next? And we went to other places in the projects, but what I definitely remember was it was at that point Kim Fields came up and said, let me walk with you. Then I started studying Ron Walters. He wrote a book of his colleagues, his students. Excellent title. Robert Smith co-edited it. It's called What This Have to Do with Black Liberation. And I wrote a piece in that. I told Brother Ron, I said, I've had the title for this essay a long time. I said, since I first started reading your work. And he said, and he looked at me the way he would look at me because he knows something coming. He said, and what is that, Brother Earl? I said, whatever I write about your work, I got the title. It's Still Walters Runs Deep. And that's what it's called. And it's analysis of black nationalism. And we were together in Atlanta, even when he was getting very sick. And he never stopped mentoring me. I was never his student at Howard. I was at the University of Michigan after I left Wayne State University. But we never let ourselves be defined by where we were. When he came, I sought him and sought his counsel. More than that, I read his work. I cited his work in my published work. And it was a pleasure to know him. And it's such an honor to be invited to a program in recognition of him. Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony is a friend of mine. I think it was Brother Teferi Brent that told me, he said, you got to come down there to the NAACP. I said, man, I ain't got nothing for the NAACP. He said, but this brother, Reverend Anthony. He said, I said, I don't have much for reverends either. He said, you got to talk to this one. And even though Brother Tafiri is younger than me, he has an insight born of that youth. I'm not suggesting that insight is inversely related to age, but sometimes it's dismissed because of age. But I already recognized he had insight. But he also was exceptional in, as we used to say, just calling a spade a spade. He said, come talk to him. So I came and talked to Reverend Anthony, and we argued. And Reverend Anthony gives you that patient look like, yeah, He got a response for that and a response for that. But like other folks in the church know, he just wait us out. Because eventually we're going to get some good sense. And we're going to come to appreciate why the church has been here so long. See? Which I did. I saw Reverend Anthony in his programs he was doing in Rwanda. I was studying international relations. But especially when Reverend Anthony would come and get young folks. And I was working with a lot of young folks then, some in the Brewster Projects, but a lot of them with a group called Save Our Sons and Daughters. And what I met Reverend Anthony, and I learned to respect Reverend Anthony, not because I was in his church, but where I met him, which was mostly outside the church, and what he was doing outside the church. And that was liberating work. Mm-hmm. So it's always a privilege to come back here, and whatever Reverend Anthony volunteers me for, I'm open to it. Because brother has always been patient with me and has, even when it was very difficult, and I can be very difficult at times. I'm also the youngest of my mother's 9. That has nothing to do with me being difficult now. But I appreciate it, and I appreciate the fellowship family, and among the ones that I've known the longest, and the wonderful sister and brother, and Reverend in our own right, assistant ministers, my sister Mayawa Reynolds, and Brother Lumumba. Yes. Okay. So I don't know why they put me on something called millennials, I guess, because I'm an old guy. But I want to talk about this and put it in the context of a sister who was organizing with us back in the late 80s, early 90s. And after this one meeting, this one presentation, she came up to me. She said she liked my spirit. She said, you talk a certain way. I'm filling in. She didn't say a certain way, but I don't want to be immodest. I'm not going to tell you what she said yet. But she said, you talk a certain way. She said, but this one caught my eye, caught my ear. She said, I never liked folks who said what they did in their time. That's what she took to me. She said, long as I'm breathing, it's my time. See? And I would say, and what I said to her then, I said, and long thereafter, it'll be your time. And I kissed her on the cheek, which I would kiss many more times after that. Caramel brown cheek, puffy, sweet. In the late 80s, early 90s, that sister's name is Mrs. Rosa Parks. Now, if she's organizing with us in the late 80s, early 90s, this is Rosa Parks. You see what I'm saying? So she had no patience with folks who said what they did in her time. See? She was making her time. It's hard to come to folks and answer these questions, and I'm no historian. I can talk about some of this with respect to the revolt. The revolt is my first memory of life, the rebellion. I was in the projects in 67. I was 4 years old. One of the things I remember distinctly was because we had to come outside because there was so much burning. There was so much fires. And I'm all in the Brewster Projects. Most of this is over on 12th Street, where I would eventually work, organized there too. But you see, one of the things I remember distinctly was they polluted our water. When you turned on the water in the project, sewage came out. See, it was like that for days. See, that's why our 4-year-old remembers this. And we were outside at night. And that struck me because my parents were rather strict. You were not outside at night. It was safer to be outside at night. You didn't want to be inside when they came. See? And I would learn who it was when they came. Of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions that were deployed here. Armored personnel carriers I thought were tanks when I was little. These were APCs. I would eventually drive them. And some of the tanks as well. My brother who was in Vietnam at that time, I would eventually drive those too. Because at 17, I wasn't going to sell dope. You weren't going to sell dope in my mother's house. And so I went to the Army because I had no place else to go. I'm one of those folks right on the border. We got into Cass. People don't know. It's hard to get into Cass Tech, but it's even harder for them to kick you out. And when they try to kick me and my boy Wayne Rogers out because of the foolish reason, and the fact is we didn't go to class, we said something that those folks had never heard before. No. They had no alternative for no. Blew us away. He said, no, you got to leave. He said, we ain't going. It's 4,000 people here. Like 8 girls to every boy. We ain't going nowhere. I'm 6 blocks from here. I'm walking to the Brewster Projects to school. I'm not going to Northeastern. I went there one day, said, this is not for me. No. But the thing was, at 17, not conscious, not knowing where my life would be, find greater safety in the U.S. Army than back home. See? But I'm not a historian. But it's important to see from the Brewster Projects, I was not the smartest one there, far from it. We had some wonderful people, had a 4th grade science teacher named Clifford Watson. See, I won't go through this because I'll start to tell a story. I just put it like this. When I got my PhD from the University of Michigan, I didn't go to my graduation. There was a national gang summit in Kansas City, 200 sets from 20 different cities. That was more important. When I got my degree, I didn't open it in Ann Arbor. I took it back to the Brewster Projects, Foster Elementary School, which now was a police precinct, the same police precinct that had over 10,000 untested rape cases. It was now a police precinct. I talked to them, used the correct words that I know how to use with police, learned that real early, and convinced them. And so they let me into this place now dark. And now dark in that long hall that I'd known since I was 5 years old, I gave homage and praise to those who instilled in that child that I could be whatever I wanted to be. And I opened that degree and thanked them. See? What's all this to say is that we all got stories, right? So I want what follows to be a function of some of those stories, okay? So when I say things like, when people come and ask where we're going, say, what do you do where you are? I teach at Penn State University. It's a racist place. It's a white supremacist place. When people say the importance of changing the narrative, you see how quick the narratives are changed on the national media? How many folks are saying white supremacism now? We've been saying white supremacism for a long time. CNN, MSNBC, ever since Charlottesville is white supremacism now. My niece Megan was sharing that. She's like, Uncle Earl, you've been saying that for a long time. I said, yeah, and I got it from people who were saying it for even longer, like Brother Herb Boyd and so many others, and Sister Joanne White. Call it what it is. It's white supremacism. But if I call it, it's easy to say that here, but if you look on my Facebook page, you'll see not my boss, not my boss's boss, my boss's boss's boss. It says white racism at Penn State. And here is the white man who says his job as provost is to ensure against racial discrimination of both kinds. It's not Donald Trump, it's him. He's the provost there. Now, I won't say his name, Nick Jones. This is the provost there. My boss's boss's boss, okay? If you won't talk about white supremacism and you won't put a name on it, how you going to tell these young people to go out there and how they should struggle? You won't even take a risk yourself. You scared to say your boss's name. And y'all got that look like Earl ain't going to have no job tomorrow. Lord, we got to get him where the Wayne State people live, but they don't want him back. He took it over. And I hope the Wayne State folks are here. The 30th anniversary of the takeover of the Student Center building. We took that building, held it 11 days. Couldn't have done it without the support of community folks. Aisha Shule, the Shrine of Black Madonna, so many different churches, so many different representatives. It was beautiful because it was the community that did that. But they still don't know. How did we get 200 black people in that building that night? How did we do it? They still don't know. They don't need to know. But we've been sharing with other people how to do it, people who are dedicated to doing that. You say, how you connect with the next generation? We'll meet you in struggle. And if you want us to come, you want these people to come, invite them, pay them, get the university to give them an honorarium. That's how we did it. We used to do that with Chokwe Lumumba. Get on the budget committee so the university brings them up. It's a public university. Welcome to your public. A lot of our answers in the questions we ask. But as I often say, and I was taught this, white supremacism won't just teach you what to think, It'll teach you how to think. See? Some of these things you won't even imagine. I don't need to see no movie called Hidden Figures. I know about those sisters. You see what I'm saying? We had a revolution in this country, the successful revolution during the Civil War. Du Bois says there was a slave revolution during the Civil War. 196,000 African Americans, 200 who fought, 300,000 in support. The understanding was if the South isn't fed, they won't be able to fight. You've heard that expression before. An army travels on its stomach. Well, he argues this in 1935. There's a slave revolution. You see what I'm saying? How did they do it? He called it the general strike. In an old newspaper from So Sad, somebody made the argument that black folks in this country have followed 3 basic strategies. The main one is building. Building, boycotting, burning. 3 major ones. The revolution that Du Bois talks about in 1935 is hidden in plain sight. Steve Hahn wrote a book in 2004, said pretty much the same thing. He's white, got a Pulitzer Prize for it. What was the strategy of the general strike? How did you take, not only did you achieve liberation, but you took most of the property, most of the capital these folks had, and you stole it. Because we were it, walking. How did we know to go to the Union? How did we know to fight? When people say like, well, how are you going to have a revolution if you're allied with the Union Army? They're just as racist. Tell me a war where you don't have allies. The Haitian Revolution, they had allies too. You see what I'm saying? White supremacy will make this seem like some of you looking. That is unfathomable. Dr. Henderson, I must challenge that. No, it's as plain as this. Let's go. And I have a book where I talk. Now, I got to talk to her because ain't nobody publishing this book. It's been rejected by most of the major presses, the academic press. It's called The Revolution Will Not Be Theorized. These folks were not only activists. You talk with Reverend Anthony. He's not only an activist. He theorizes and strategizes. I'm convinced the only reason we're here is not because of the good graces of white people. Our people strategized, theorized. The Underground Railroad was us. Wasn't no crazy secret quilts and white folks hiding us in basements. No, that was a myth. Started in 1896 by a cat named Berkston. But I got to get on. I got to move now. But what I'm saying is that white supremacy will not just teach you what to think, but how to think. 50 years ago, this book was published, The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual by Harold Cruz. 50-year anniversary. There's no major conference for Harold Cruz this year. So we organized one. And it'll be out, I'll tell you as we finalize it. But no major conference. He was also the first director of African American Studies at University of Michigan. They're not celebrating Harold Cruz at University of Michigan. Same reason they're not inviting us back to the University of Michigan when we took it over in 87. You see? Harold Cruz in their argument said the importance of cultural revolution. You must attack on the cultural front, but in a way that implicates political and economic issues. The attacks from Bree Nelson's going down, taking down that Confederate flag, attacking these statues. Don't get it twisted. Don't look at that and then say, you appreciate that struggles are long, they're protracted. It's one phase. When I hear Andy Young come out and say, as my sister Melinda Price pointed out, that it can't be about statues. I said, you want to say, Brother Andy, I think somebody told you in your past, it can't be about lunch counters. It never was about lunch counters, and it's not about statues, but it is. You start there. Raise the issue. What is the issue? The fundamental contradiction. The fundamental, foundational contradiction in this country is white supremacism. How dare you deign to talk of freedom when you're slave masters, rapists, murderers. You separate families. You boil people in oil. You're among the most detestable human beings that have existed. And you dare to talk of freedom, justice, and equality for yourselves while you will make of people chattel, property. The punishment for birth is your child will be owned by me. This is Washington and Jefferson and those others that formed the foundation of this country in Philadelphia. Right. Folks don't talk about that. Why? That's the question. Why? You won't say it, you won't speak it, but so many do. That's who we build on. It worries me when I hear black folks say, well, you know something, you know the problem with black folks? I say, no. I know a lot of wonderful successes of black folk, And the biggest one is about 40 million of us. There was only 3.5, there was only 4 million of us in 1860. We shouldn't be here. So I want to get to the problems, right? But as long as I'm talking to someone who appreciates the fact that black folks have been the moral vanguard of this country. We have defined freedom, liberation, and justice. You talk about the liberation of workers. We were the workers. We were workers. We were a race. We were nation all together. That's why imported models, especially Marxist ones, don't fit our reality. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying as a scholar, I think I can provide supportive evidence to document that, but just not at this time. But we were race, nation, workers all together. See? That's us. Brother Henderson, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, you're not mentioning women. Yeah, I mentioned women. I mentioned women several times. You just don't see it. Because how do you talk about black people and not talk about black women? The majority of black people are women and girls. Oh, you mean non-black women. That's what you want to say. You really want to say I ain't mentioned white women. Call it what it is. Don't let somebody stand up talking about black people say, well, you really haven't touched the real issue of gender here. Did you not, why I said black people? So you're talking about somebody else's gender. So say it. Like, whatever class, whatever grouping you got, workers, women, LGBTQ, whatever category you got, make it black, it'll be the lowest of them. Just like in the 80s when we were arguing against, among gay brothers and sisters because of the privileging of white gay men with respect to resources for AIDS. We're making that argument in the 80s. The group that I'm a faculty advisor of at Penn State is the first group to have an openly gay president that wasn't recognized as a LGBTQ organization. It's called Black Caucus. His name was Darrell Watson. See what I'm saying? The challenge. You got these folks who would invoke these things. They have no respect for Audre Lorde. They've never read her. You know what I'm saying? But they want to use something that can be viewed as taking away from the moral status of the black liberation struggle. How do you come into church saying, okay, I'm talking about black, but I want to be universal. And y'all help me with this because I'm not a church-going person. So help me, Reverend Adams. I think it was a Levite. One was from the tribe of Judea, and the other one was a Samaritan. That story of the Good Samaritan is taken as a universal example. You telling me a story related to these three obscure tribes of people can be viewed as universal, but a story of 40 million African Americans cannot be universal. And you in a church? Are you serious? You say, Brother Henderson, you want us to study theoretical stuff and theorize it, man? I mean, you come in here, you got big words, stuff like that. Yeah, but you study a book, got Thessalonians in it, all types of Corinthians, 1 and 2, according to Trump, right? See? No. Who trained us to think like that? So it's so important to reject that. So I want to say this in the context of this is the spirit I'm coming in. I'm not saying what anyone has to do or must do. I'm not even coming like that. I'm saying ground ourselves. Use our history as a resource and not simply a reference. Draw from it. Draw from its lessons. Look here. It's got to be clear. White folks don't fear black people. They're not afraid. They know even if they do the crime, they call the police shoot us first. See? They don't fear black folks. They invoke fear, so even when they are the ones victimizing, they can cloak themselves with the greater moral authority or the greater moral position. I was afraid. See, you reject that. So we don't say fear. They don't fear. They ain't scared of us. Use the technology of the times. The Garvey movement and the Harlem Renaissance. They use radio and newspapers. Brother Herb referred to that earlier when he was talking about Abbott, if you didn't know what his reference point was. The civil rights and the black power movement, TV and magazines, and of course the whole institutions of the black arts movement. You know, the Black Panther Party newspaper, the Newsreel finally got the news, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, and so many others. The urban peace and justice movement, the main one that's not studied, the 1980s, from the killing of Yusuf Bell in Atlanta to the killing of Yusuf Hawkins in New York, as Brother Kwame Kenyatta used to say. Kwame Kenyatta was in that building with us in Wayne State. corresponding with Chokwe Lumumba, strategizing with us. That's how we stay in there 11 days, while you got folks in there. It's April, turn off all the heat, so it's cold in there, no hot water, police playing with their guns upstairs, going downstairs popping balloons. See? What type of sadistic person does that? I'm not even talking about where you stand politically. How you look at your child, say, I'm going to go to work, and this one I'm going to do with some students up there just fighting for justice. All we did was dust off old demands from Herb and Lonnie Peake and Dan Aldridge and all these other folks from the Association of Blacks. That's all we did. They reneged on those. It's just 20 years later, we're trying to get them fulfilled. You see? Still don't know how we got 200 people in that building. See? In 87 at Michigan, we surrounded the president's building. We learned. They had tunnels underneath. They could go underneath. And there ain't much business in the president's building. We didn't know. We're trying to imitate what brothers and sisters did in the 60s. We learned. So in 89, what's the building we took over? The one that they wouldn't be surprised to find black folks in, but they also wouldn't be suspicious if our presence was in large numbers. Not 200 now, only about 6 or 7. The financial aid building. But it's also strategic. It's the financial aid building. Okay? The idea was to get so many in, and those who were in, then they would do strategic things inside. It's what brothers and sisters had taught us before. What I want to do. When I hear people, and it hurts my heart, people say, this not your grandfather's or grandmother's civil rights movement. If you knew the civil rights movement, you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't say that. If you knew the efforts that were undertaken by those sisters and brothers, you wouldn't say that. You would instead study it better. But what we have now in the urban peace and justice movement, what developed was these organizations building in the bloodshed of their children, led by sisters like Clementine Barfield in Detroit, who built in the bloodshed of her 17-year-old son who was killed outside Northwestern High School. She built in the bloodshed of Save Our Sons and Daughters. Look at Ms. You talk about a Christian ethic, a Christian love. Look at what this woman says. My teenage son was a victim of gun violence, and so was the teenager who killed him. That's something else. That's something else. This woman's got a love like, she got a love like Mississippi. That's a Mississippi woman. She come from Mississippi to Detroit. Mrs. Barfield, she'd want me to say that. Built an organization, Save Our Sons and Daughters, motivated by her daughter Linda, said we just can't let it stand. But what did she do? She organized. To do what? Organize for peace. She started with conflict resolution, but she said, that's what we're trying to resolve conflict, but what are we for? What were we for? And you know who gave her peace? You know who gave her that? Brother Herb, you know who gave her that? Ron Scott. The brother who brought back the charter for the first Black Panther Party in Detroit. This is 87. She said, we need to be what are we for? And Ron Scott said, peace. And then he set up something that I know you'll know, Brother Herb. He called it the Survival Institute. See, it harkens back to the Panthers survival program, you see? But this is 87 unto the night. This is Miss Barfield. What Miss Barfield does, Brenda Muhammad, Mothers of Murdered Sons in Atlanta. She builds that. Barbara Meredith, Mother's Rock in L.A. You see? Built so sad chapters around the country. This was the most progressive period in hip-hop. One of the reasons people today don't understand the 60s, they don't understand the 80s. 80s brings about the Reagan Revolution. Ronald Reagan? How did Gil Scott-Heron say? The man who called for, I'm going to mess it up from B-movie. I better not cite it. Plus, I don't have no copyright problems. But this is Ronald Reagan. These conservatives. These arch conservatives. He went out and went and got the Macomb Democrats. The Reagan Democrats, those Macomb County white supremacists, racists, announced he stopped in Philadelphia, Mississippi. He had a campaign stop in Philadelphia. You say he a politician. Of course he's going to Philadelphia, not Philadelphia, Mississippi. He went to Neshoba County. And if you see the picture, you know one of the people in the background of the picture? Paul Manafort. But that's another story. But look here. This is the 80s, the most progressive period in hip-hop. See? This is the 80s. There's the beginnings of the computers. When you have computers, Netscape, etc. To relate to this era, you at least need computers in hip-hop. And in hip-hop, this is where you get, Reverend Andy didn't forget the name. That was funny, Reverend. Chaos and Maestro is the first Detroit rap group, Detroit rap group to make the top 100, the first to perform at Joe Louis Arena. How do I know? I was there with him. Right there on stage. The Raw Dog Clan. EA Force and The Last Resort. But it was on the strength of this brother here. But this brother wanted to be more conscious. He had conscious raps and got a flow. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I know he'd be excellent preacher. You should hear him flow. But it's his consciousness too. When he's a young man, that's chaos and maestro, and that's chaos. But the most progressive period in hip hop. And what do you have? The Free South Africa movement. The Free South Africa. So at the University of Michigan, you're going to like this, Dr. Boyd. At the University of Michigan, I step on that campus, I see somebody speaking. Her name's Barbara Ramsey. She's speaking, rallying the folks in the Free South Africa Coordinate Committee. I was in the Black Student Union. I said, we could do something here. Other people like Brother Tom Levis in sociology, Roderick Lindsay, Regina Jimson, who's now a lawyer in Detroit, in the Black Student Union, and we organized what would become the Black Action Movement 3. The first one was called the United Coalition Against Racism, Black Leadership, Multicultural in its composition, Black Action Movement 3, Charles Winders, Chuck Winders, he's a preacher now, Brother J.D., Sister Lauren, organized the frats and sororities. Say you're going to have your frats and sororities online, instead of having them doing some of this other stuff, though I'm not speaking to your governance, why not have them make some of the signs for the protests? And that's what they did. See? The Black Action Movement. I'm hoping the stories give you examples when you say, so we ask different kind of questions about what we do now. What we do now, what we've done before. Because we aren't facing anything like our people face, and that's why I went back to the slave revolution. You see? We're not facing anything like that. It's just different. It's not difficult. It's different. If we study the strategies, what did they use? What was the general strike? The League of Revolutionary Black Workers attempted to organize a general strike as well. I know another man who's organizing strikers when he's assassinated. Sanitation workers in Memphis. In Detroit, the strike, yes, that's what we do. Look here, some of the problems emerge because we try to make it national too quick. Problems of Baltimore ain't necessarily problems of Detroit. They are at one level, just as Brother Sister said before. But the strategies, the tactics, it's important to have an overall doctrine, but the strategy and tactics, you need flexibility. Because the leverage that we can exert in Detroit is different than what we can exert in Memphis, Chicago, LA. See, so we should be patient with our people as we talk about those different strategies. But it's essential. We have immediate access on the cultural front. Use that to implicate political and economic factors. Now I got to go because I'm taking time here. But I want to say, study these. Have someone who's studying these. And just like Brother Dan Aldridge say, you can coordinate these through the churches. I talked with Bishop Frank Reed at AME about these very things, and Reverend Anthony as well. To coordinate, use what we have. And the Black Lives Matter movement is using social media. And this is where we can add the theoretical context. See? That is, how do you plan to execute in ways that are novel that will lead to your securing your objectives? You see? So if you organize on social media, but it's important to use feints. It's important to be other than where people expect you to be. It's important to have clear-cut demands for specific objectives. Other times, you don't need demands. Unity is something you don't need. Watch me now. Unity is something you don't need. In fact, unity often makes it easier for you to be targeted. You can have unity of purpose, but not necessarily of organization. If it's only one organization, I know just where to go. You said we can recruit better. Yeah, and I can target you better too. I encourage students at Penn State, create the Wednesday club, the Tuesday club. Most revolutionaries didn't walk around with a revolutionary t-shirt. How y'all doing? I'm a revolutionary. They didn't say, we coming at 12 noon. And then when they get there, they said, man, they was waiting for us. Why you think they was waiting for you? Well, you announced you coming at 12 noon. No. Have the protest there. Have this one with the integrated protest. Have this one, it's all black. Have this one, it's all women. Have this one, it's all trans. Meet at a common place. Protest around a police station. We know why white supremacist police persist, even though you can have black police chiefs. One, they keep the same manual. The same manual they use when stressed. Same manual they use when stressed. The same manual when stressed raided our house. Put a carbine to my head. They put a gun to my mother's head, a 45 to my brother's head. I was upstairs in my bed reading a Richie Rich comic book, no lie. He comes in. I look. That's a carbine. I would learn that from military service. I didn't know what it was then except a big gun. He pointed at it. He said, "Wrong house." He lifted it and smiled. I've been looking for that face for a long time, Brother Herb. But I was just 9, reading a Richie Rich comic book. The oppression we can all speak about. This is when I say to be patient with our people. Man, I'm listening. I disagree with one. I may disagree with you wholeheartedly, but I never forget we're on the right side of history, and I never try to write you out of the history, even if I disagree with you strongly. This is one of the things I think so beautiful about Brother Herb and what he did this morning. Brother Herb weaves stories like that. He don't know. I've been following him long before he knew me. I'm from the Brewsters, but my family started off over there on Beechwood. And a bunch of them went to Northwestern. And even when I was at Cass, Northwestern was the first black swimming team to win the city championship. You know anything about integration in Detroit, you know how it went through the recreation centers. Northern was the second black swimming team. But Northwestern's was particular because of their coach. His name was Ernie Rogers. And the Rogers Academy of Performing Arts to talk about culture there in Ernie Rogers. And Ernie would come to the Brewster Projects, and he'd work us out and train us too. It's still there, Wheeler Center, because I was a swimmer. Now, I had a beautiful stroke. I only had one problem. It wasn't fast. But we learned, and we went out, and that's how I found places like Palmer Park, water shows. Who comes up with that? But this is what he came up with in the projects. You see what I mean? Don't accept the conditions you're faced with. Ms. Barfield would say, we're going to build a shrine where Donnell Berry, 16 years old, he died on that rock. We're going to paint that rock and make a shrine so they know somebody of value, of worth, died here. You're not simply going to walk by it. When we're organizing, after the police killing of Malice Green, if you're organized about police killing now, you don't know about Malice Green, study it. I'm not saying you're wrong or anything. I'm just saying you're going to get ideas from this. We organized with Malice Green, and somebody said, we need to organize here and keep organizing here. But it's the beginning of the school year, and there's already been 44 girls raped. So we started by clearing up some of these fields and patrolling them. From Brothers on Patrol until what culminates in groups like Detroit 300. There's a long history. It just strikes me. And I'm not as old as some of the others, but I'm old. When folks think they got to start anew, how do you reach out to these people? Invite her boy to your school. And if you don't have a school, invite them to your program. Have a program, and especially, though, if you got a school, have them pay them. Give them an honorarium. So he can come up and talk about his book, talk about his experience. Do this with the brothers and sisters. Often the answers are in the questions we ask. I got to wrap this up, y'all, because you got some insightful people, some exceptionally bright people. I mean, Jessica Carmore, this is so Detroit. Though sometimes she thinks she's from Brooklyn. She thinks she's from Brooklyn sometimes so much. I saw her last time, I think, on Brooklyn Street. There is a Brooklyn Street on Detroit. But sister, who except somebody from Detroit gonna go in Showtime at the Apollo with some poetry? They're like, poetry, that's all you got? She's like, that's all I'm gonna need. And you gonna agree with me. 5 times they agree with it. That's Detroit. You know what I'm saying? You got one of the best pieces on the movie, Detroit movie, don't get me started talking about it, but one of the best, it's an awful movie, but just like Brother Herb, no black agency, but one of the best historical treatments of that movie is from this brother, Jamar Jordan, who's on this panel. Representatives from Black Lives Matter to pull from this. This is what we were taught to do, and this is what we did. And this is why I started off telling you, when I met Reverend Anthony, I'm arguing with him. I say that not to be immodest or definitely not to be disrespectful, but to point out, if you're younger here and you feel like you want to argue, that's why I told that story. Because I wanted to too. I wanted to be heard, but he was listening. What I didn't realize, he'd heard much of this before. And what I should have done is taken notes to get some of the examples and then put my own little twist on them. You see? And that's what I'm encouraging you all to do, and I hope this comes out in the panel. Can I have just a couple more minutes to say something? We got to see, and this is the other thing. Y'all saw what Sister Monica just said. We have to go defer and respect women's leadership.
It is hard to shut that down. We got so much in common. They kicked me out of CAS too for truancy, but I didn't know you just had to say no. Mumford. I was on the swim team too, but I was good. But anyway, let's give a rousing applause to Dr. Earl Henderson. He is a wealth of information. And if any of you are like me, you could just sit at his feet and listen, but we have to respect time. I want to ask my panelists to come make your way. Your names are there. You got some seats, some goodie bags. Some of you got to leave, and I hate that Brother Jaman just said he don't have a lot of time, because that's another one with a wealth of information. So I'm going to be real quick. I'm going to respect everybody's time. We're going to keep it going. There's a brother outside here named Jeremiah Wheeler, young entrepreneur selling T-shirts on the way out. Hit him up. If you didn't get Herb Boyd's book, we got that. We're moving into our millennial phase, so they like to do things real fast. So we're going to do this real quick, easy, and dirty. In these bags, you see, we gave everybody a bag. We like to give. We give hugs at fellowship. We like to recognize people, and we like to support one another. So the food you was eating, that was sweet potato sensations, those cakes and those muffins and those cookies. And I'll start with her, Etta Fly. She is joining us on the panel here, and her company and her parent and family. She comes from Sweet Potato Sensations. She a fellowship chapel baby, basically. And she's a bad sister. You just see her rocking her creation. She's creative. I love the sister bond that she has. I love the family bond that they have. They family live down the street from us, so you know they must be some good people. So I just want to recognize that they did provide those goodies down there. Brother Jordan, did you want to say something real quick?
I want to say something before I leave.
Yes.
If it's possible,
Okay.
I can just say something, because I know I can't stay.
I know you can't
So
stay.
if I
I
could
hate
just
that he
say-
can't stay. He is a scholar. We got so much wealth of information here. This young brother, Jaman Jordan, go on and say what you're going to say.
So I just want to say something before I leave, and I really apologize, but I also have a business, a tour company, and so I have a tour that's booked, and I have to get to that place. It's going to take me about 20 minutes to get there. So I want to say a few things. This is this message should be to the millennials, and really, Brother Earl, he opened the door on what I needed to say before I get out of here, and that is that we have this history. We have this movement from young people that has already existed. When I graduated from high school, and I barely graduated, I'm gonna make that clear. I wasn't a dropout. I was a drop in. I dropped into school every so often, and so, but I finally graduated from high school. You know, I got this summer job before I went off to Western Michigan University, and I had this little summer job. My supervisor was this guy that you see down there named Doc Earl Henderson. And so you've already heard from him, and he was my supervisor, and I thought I knew a little something. You know, I had been studying and reading here and there, and that brother's like, did you read the Origin of Black Civilization? Did you read Shake on the Joke? Did you read? And I'm like, what? I don't know all this stuff. And so he opened my mind to a whole array of information that I needed to learn. And I was a young man. And so that is the history of our movement. So before I leave, we got to talk about I'm going to talk real quickly about that history. Here in the city of Detroit, which Brother Herb told us earlier when he talked about William Lambert and the Thornton and Ruth of Blackburn uprising in the city of Detroit, when hundreds of black people stormed the city jail at that time to free two people who had escaped from slavery, Thornton and Ruth of Blackburn. One young woman goes into the jail, meeting with Ruth of Blackburn inside of the jail, and switches clothes with her in the jail. So the sheriff, you know, he thinks all black people look alike. He don't even know that the woman he should be holding has walked out, and the woman that he should be keeping behind bars is gone, and another woman has switched with her. Well, that woman, Caroline French, was only 19 years old. So she's a young woman. in the crowd that ends up wresting Thornton from the slave catchers and the sheriff and deputy, in the crowd is a young activist named William Lambert. At that time, he's only 15 years old. Now, he would grow up and become one of the leaders of the Underground Railroad in the city of Detroit. But he's a young man at that time. So he's only 15. And so when we talk, even when we get to the 67 rebellion, and we got Michael Lewis out there leading the crowd to resist the police, he's only 19. Michael Lewis is only 19 years old. I'm sorry, only 23 years old. And William Walter Scott III is only 19 years old, who throws the first brick. And of course, you saw the film, or some of you seen the film, where you see a young Carl Cooper, 17 years old, a young Fred Temple, 18 years old, and a young Aubrey Pollard, 19 years old, being killed by the Detroit Police Department. And a group of activists in the city of Detroit, and they're young activists, relatively young activists at that time, organizing this People's Tribunal at Central United Church of Christ, which is missing from the film. This doesn't get discussed at the film. And black agency ain't discussed. So in the film, African Americans are portrayed two ways: as criminals during the actual rebellion, and as victims inside of the Algiers Motel. But we're more than that, and you are more than that, and our youth are more than that. And so I want to leave that message before I leave, that young people, you have always been the movement. I was part of that young, but I ain't giving it up just because I'm old. All right? So I'm right there still with young people. And I teach them, I talk to them, but I want them to use what I've learned and to take it further than I could ever have taken it in my young life. All right? I had to say that, and now I got to get out of here. Thank you all.
So thank you for that. Take your goodies. I'm going to talk about what's in that bag in a second. But real quick, Dr. Jamon Jordan is a brilliant historian, particularly as it relates to black history and Detroit history, with the DIA, with the Detroit Historical Museum. I love his story about how the Detroit Historical Museum kind of poo-pooed him away and then said, oh, we made a mistake, we need you. And if you want to know, well, what statues in the city, where are the statues that we might want to have come down in the city of Detroit? That's the brother that you want to talk to. That's the brother that knows who the streets are named after. You know, you driving down the Lodge. You heard him this morning talking about changing the name of Cobo Hall because Mayor Cobo had some racist historical ways. So anyway, Brother Jamon Jordan, hate to lose him, but glad that he said that. So let me real quickly, I'm gonna start on the end there. That brother down there named Tommy Walker, Detroit versus everybody. Anybody heard of that? Little known company, but let me tell you real quick. So young is all get out. These are real millennials. Some of the people up here are real not millennials, but so that brother there is a millennial. And let me tell you how good God is and how good people are. So I go into a store. So in the bags, some people got awards, and they deserve that. They have legacy. They are critical thinkers. And so, but we wanted to give everybody a taste of Detroit. And so inside their bag was some Faygo soda and some Better Made chips and a little English D fidget spinners. And all y'all heavy thinkers, spin your fidgets because it helps to soothe you and all that different things. So when you press it, it keeps spinning. That's how it works. So it makes you calm down and all that while you're on the phone and doing all that other stuff you do. And inside, though, is Detroit versus everybody kind of pieces. So he's got some shirts and hats, you all know, but he's got fanny packs, he's got ashtrays. You don't have to be a smoker to have an ashtray. It's just a conversation piece because it says Detroit versus everybody. Lapel pins. So anyway, I come from the Wendell Anthony School, and so I walk in and I called ahead, and the sister was very professional, and I said, I'm buying a bunch of stuff. I'm talking like 20 hats and 20 ashtrays. I said, call Tommy and tell him I want a discount. And she called Tommy. Her phone wasn't working, but she worked it out. She called Tommy, and he said, yeah, give her a discount. I said, I love you. See you tomorrow. So that's who Tommy is with Detroit versus everybody. So again, supporting our own, making it recycle. And next to him is one of those non-millennials I was telling you about. No, he just on the cusp, but he's kind of family too, so I can make fun of him. Donnell White, Executive Director of the Detroit NAACP. I want to go fast just because of the time, not to disrespect anybody. Everyone up here is very dynamic. This brother here is the youngest executive director, I think, of anybody's organization. Darnell, he came up and through the ranks. I remember when he was in the front office with a big old afro, and I called him Frederick Douglass. And, you know, he's just a dynamic young man. He represents well all kind of boards and committees, so he is going to be sharing his thoughts with us as well. Next to him is Tatiana Grant, and this young entrepreneur, if you don't know her, you will know her. She started off with a Kool-Aid stand. It's in her blood. I talked about this earlier, about how young people get caught up in a spirit gets in them, and it just keeps going. That's what happened to her. So it went from Kool-Aid to hair, nails. Now she's infused PR and do charm and real estate. I mean, I see her everywhere because I follow her, because I know she is one to be watched, one of those fabulous 40 under 40 people. I mentioned my sister Etta Fly. I didn't mention that she's a fellow. Did I mention she's a fellowship baby? Mm-hmm. All right, I just wanted to put that in there. And Donnell's a fellowship baby too. Yep, we claiming them. Next to Miss Etta Fly is the brother who is the local Black Lives Matter leader, director, president, Andre Guilford. If you don't know what Black Lives Matter is, then I don't know where you're being. I can't really help you out. But Black Lives Matter, hashtag thingy, Andre Guilford. And then next to him is another Fellowship Chapel baby, Chaos and Maestro. I have the album. It's in my office, literally. Chaos and Maestro, Minister Brother Teferi Brent, Detroit 300, our Men's Christian Fellowship leader. He's just the minister of the streets. You know, he fights for the people, the babies, the mamas. When he's that brother that's going to put the coat on the ground, help you walk over it, carry you over it if he needs to. He's just been raised like that. He's that kind of man, that kind of brother. You know that he's standing up for what he believes in and all those good things. So Brother Teferi Brent. And lastly, but certainly not least, our moderator. I met her years ago. She might not remember this. She was asked to speak at Dave Bing, and First Lady Bing did some type of First Ladies luncheon thingy, and I was invited for some reason. Was it Mother's Day? See, I don't get into all of that naming stuff, and so I was honored to go. And so this sister got up, and she was, whoo, that's what I connected with. I didn't even know what I was at, you know. I just knew it was some with First Ladies, and I bought the book. You selling it, I'm buying. I support my people. But anyway, Jessica Care Moore, if you don't know her, I don't know how to make you know her, that she's the mother of King Moore. She's been called the Beyonce of poetry. She was just in New York. I'm following her going, is she going to be here? I mean, she go to Spain. She's all over the world. She's so profound. She's more powerful, more fearless, more profound, more passionate, more better. She is just all that in a bag of chips. And so I'm going to move out the way, let this get going. Get your mics ready for Q&A, because we're going to get flowing, because the millennials don't take long. They can get it in now. All right. Thank
you. All right. Afternoon, family. Really honored to be here. I want to thank Reverend Wendell Anthony for asking me to moderate. Just really empowering to hear Dr. Henderson, who I've known since I was about 17 years old, learning conflict resolution with Save Our Sons and Daughters. And yeah, I'm a poet and I won the Apollo, but the most important thing that I've done, besides just being from Detroit, is being an institution builder. And so today, you know, beyond the I don't know what a millennial is, like Reverend Anthony, it's not my favorite term in the world. I like to consider us continuums. You know, like people, cultural revolutionaries that are continuing in the footsteps of our elders is probably a better title for this. I know most of the people on the panel. Tommy, I haven't met you, but I just want you to know I'm going to be did a cameo on the new 50 Cent thing that's coming on BET, and I had Detroit versus Everybody on anyway. So walking up Harlem, that's how I stroll 125th Street. So Brooklyn might try to claim me, but this is all Detroit all day, forever. And so honored to be here, and I think it's important that we have this forward-moving conversation that connects generations, because we had, you know, some people that were a couple years, maybe a decade, Earl, or two, you know, older than us, but we learn from you, and so it's important that you help us to inform us so that we can help the young ones keep going. And I remember when I was in Ferguson on the ground there, and Sonia Sanchez was mad at me because she said, well, why didn't you call me? You know, to ask me what to do, just in case you got arrested. You know, you're supposed to have the phone numbers written on your bodies in case they take your things. And so, you know, this is my teacher who's 82 now, right? 82 strong. And so I know I'm for one of those children of the Black arts movement. I understand I come from something. We don't come from nothing. And that Black lives matter. Black lives have always mattered. And that I've been an activist on the ground my entire life. And how can you not be, being from Detroit, right? So what I want to ask everybody, just to kind of chime in, because I know our time is limited, but everybody here does a lot of powerful things, and Etta Flies, my sister, yes, owns Sweet Potato Sensations, but also does an incredible, important piece, because I bury people all the time here. And so we have to talk about how do we continue to move on as we lose people still in the streets of Detroit. People who are being murdered here and killed here in our city. And so she has a place called Where Do Black Women Go to Grieve. And so I would love for us to just kind of just go down the line. We can start with the ferry and talk about, so people can know the work that you're doing, not just online, because people always talk about the Facebook revolutionaries, you know, but like, what are you really doing on the ground to further this movement so that our elders are not forgotten about, so we can teach about Dr. Boyd and know Reverend Anthony and Dr. Henderson, but also say this is what we have to do next in order to make sure that our Black boys and girls stay alive and know who they are. And just if we all, I mean, I came out of Cody High School, and everybody didn't go to Cass, right? And so I went to Cody, and there is a conspiracy to destroy our children right now. So I've been in every side of every Detroit public school. I'm in Western as a dream director now. And it is important that we know that they are pushing our students through these schools to get them to college so they will fail miserably by their freshman year and drop out. And so that's what's happening right now. So even the honors students can't read on the level of my 10-year-old child. Do you hear me? They got 3.5s, but they let them read aloud, and you know that they're getting pushed through. And so I want to speak about education. What informed all of you to get you where you are so that you can become entrepreneurs, so that you can lead the way you lead in your own communities? And how can we support what you're doing so we can keep it going? So I'm going to start with you, Teferi, and we can just kind of go down the line.
Well, you mentioned education, and I think that's a very critical piece. I think it's really the substratum of this whole discussion as far as I'm concerned. My name is Brother Teferi Brent. I would consider myself just a servant of African people, just a son of Detroit, a brother who tries to live his life in accordance with God's will and his way and his word. All that I do is really born out of a theological perspective instilled in me by my pastor, Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony, and a socio-political understanding born out of the teachings of my mentor, Dr. Earl Henderson, and really an activist organizing trek or path that was really born out of the work of Mama Clementine Barfield. The three of them really played a critical part in all that I do, in all that I am, in my work. The education piece is critical because I studied them, I listened to them, I humbled myself, and I submitted to their leadership, and I watched them, more importantly. For me, what I do is not anything special. It's what a good Christian's supposed to do. It's what a real black man, it's what a real human being is supposed to do. When you see your people hurting or you see folks in need, you have a responsibility to do something about it. So what I do is just a natural extension and a reflection of who it is I claim myself to be, and that's a servant of God. And how can you love God and not be loving? For God is love, right? And Christ is the Prince of Peace. So as far as my urban peace and justice work, it's born out of a foundation laid by the three individuals I just mentioned. But it's most importantly really born out of my understanding of who and what God is. God is what you see, God is what you feel, God is what you touch, God is what you hear. And like my pastor always says, God has no ears but ours, no hands but ours, no eyes but ours, no feet but ours. So if you want folks to meet God, then you need to go meet folk and do the work of God. So really for me, that's where I come from. That's what makes me do what I do. It's just really about other folks, seeing other folks blessed, seeing other folk really actualize and walk in their purpose and their potential, and recognizing that I may be an instrument or a tool that can be used to help brothers and sisters get there, and recognizing the greatness of who we are, recognizing that none of us were born to be dope dealers, none of us are born to be pimps, none of us were born to be carjackers, none of us were born to be any of those things. None of our children were born to be killers. None of our children were born not to read. None of our children were born to be counterproductive, negative. That's not what we were created and made to be. if any of us are those things, it's because we've been taught those things by people, places, and things. And if we've been taught those things by people's places and things, then we can be untaught those things and taught something different. So that's what I've learned. That's what I know. And I just hope and pray that I can continue to be a part of the re-education and the removing of the miseducation of our people through my example, through my love, and through my service.
Thank you. Yes. And so, Andre, you know, with Black Lives Matter, it's so important that you're here because this is a word that people, these 3 words that people hear a lot and don't have a lot of context for the organization. So I would love for you to speak about Black Lives Matter, especially if you represent Detroit and that national movement, international movement, really. And just, you know, my 10-year-old son saw Charlottesville on the CNN. He saw the white boys with the little tiki torches, and he said, well, Mommy, that's the KKK. I thought they were dead. And so, you know, and so for my son is 10, so that's really Black Lives Matter is what he knows of what the new movement is and has been around that and heard that term. So I'd love for you to speak to what is the role of the youth movement? How do people, I'm in the in-between of that. I'm older than you, but not an elder yet. And depends on who's in the room, right? High school, I'm an elder. And so, you know, it's all relative. And so I'd love for you to speak to that and to give us more context about what Black Lives Matter is, especially in Detroit.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.
It's definitely I'm very humbled to be here at Fellowship Chapel in the shadows of Dr. Wendell Anthony and my mentor, Maya Reynolds, and Baba Tafari Brent, and Dr. Earl Henderson. Definitely humbled because you see these people on TV and you read their work, and I became an activist as a result of being a product of the work of these individuals. So I'm grateful that I'm part of this collective of individuals here on this panel. First of all, I want to make a couple clarifications as to who I am. My name is Andre Guilford. I'm a minister, licensed Baptist minister at Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, where I lead our social justice initiative and our young adults ministry. I'm also a high school English teacher at Detroit Public Safety Academy. So that is my job that pays. Praise God. Hallelujah. I'm also one of the the organizing leaders of Black Lives Matter Detroit, for which I am no longer involved. But I do take credit for being one of the, putting the sweat and the tears in those first couple of months of organizing the chapter. Gotcha. And I'm currently, again, also an organizing member of Black Youth Project 100, which is a very similar organization for young people, part of the movement for Black Lives. So those are a couple of mediums in which I do my work. And as far as your question concerning the young people, being a high school educator and coming to the classroom, as a revolutionary and a radical, I bring the spirits of Audie Lloyd and Bayard Rustin and the spirits of many of the Detroit folks who poured into me. My grandmother, Valeria Guilford, and my mother, who defied the odds, who lived off of food assistance, but yet still decided to pour into a young man who eventually went on to go to pursue a Master of Divinity. Those people I bring into my classroom. I try to remind my students on a regular basis of who they are, who they can be, deconstructing white supremacy in their minds. Sometimes our kids can see what's on TV, let it filter into their heads, take in all that crap, essentially. And part of my process as an educator, before I can actually do what educare meant to be, bring up, I have to remove some of the residue so that I can actually bring to where they need to be, where they bring up the potential in them that was planted in them, at their birth. So part of what I do in my work is a lot of liberation, a lot of healing work. That's my niche, a part of this movement. As a minister, I recognize that I need to, Black people are broken to a degree where we sometimes, our work comes from out of this brokenness, right? Comes from out of this trauma. You're still whole, right? But we're still broken. So a lot of the response of which we're, activating and organizing is trying to make certain that our children do not have to experience that kind of brokenness or trauma that my ancestors have experienced through slavery, through Jim Crow, even through gentrification right now here in the city. So one of the things that we're doing in BYP 100 is we're trying to bring forth awareness to the ways in which white supremacy is in effect here in the city of Detroit and in this Midwest area. A lot of times, another thing with my children, I noticed that they do not know that racism is in existence here in Detroit. So I'm constantly reminding them that racism has just been redeveloped. It's evolved into a new person, a new kind of thought, a new kind of system that is now much more covert than it was back in the 60s or back in what we consider the civil rights movement, even though the civil rights movement is still in existence right now. We're continuance of that movement. So I'm trying to remind them that racism, right now, we're living in the shadows of Christopher Columbus, who we last weekend tried to cover up, because in covering up this statue, this standing in the shadow of this man who essentially raped North America, and standing in the shadow of that, we cannot move forward. So in effect, we decided that we're going to come together as a collective and we're going to surround Christopher Columbus and try to cover up his face. We tried to cover up his face. That thing is really tall.
Right.
But we tried to cover up his face because we wanted to make certain that people recognize that before we can move forward, we're going to have to deconstruct this legacy of white supremacy that's all around us, all around the city. And you have to first be aware of it in order for us to move forward. So those are a couple of things that we're doing here in the city to as a part of this movement.
Is there a website for the project?
Yeah, so Black Youth Project, you can find, we're a nationwide collective of chapters. We have chapters in Detroit, DC, Bay Area, San Francisco, New Orleans, Durham. You probably saw the picture of that statue that was taken down in Durham, and one of our members was standing right next to that statue. So we're all over, so byp100.org, byp100.org.
Thank you. And that's something you said that struck me was, Black people are broken, but, America is broken. And so it's not, you have to, the country is broken. And our education system, as you know, if you're in front of students in Detroit, is very broken. And so maybe this is another panel, but just to dig in with education for me is such a big piece, and like how, besides just like pulling statues down, we have to absolutely radicalize and change the education system for our children in particular. Otherwise, they're still going to be regurgitating the same lies as truth to our kids inside textbooks. So we have to also start there, and then the statues will become irrelevant because our babies will know that, okay, let's just, this can't be built or we will tear it down. So I feel like some of that is, in my opinion, a little backwards, and that we've got to change what we're putting, the information that we're putting in front of our kids. Which is, I'm unfortunate that Jamon's not here, who was with Insa-Roma, talking about African-centered schools and things that we've lost a lot in Detroit as well, which is unfortunate. Everybody and got Mama Jessica and Baba Teferi up in their house to be the mamas and the teachers, and so we do have to create a system, right, at some point, that actually teaches the truth. So, but thank you for your work, and we're going to continue the conversation. You're talking about healing work, and I want to send it to my sister, Etta Fly, who, yes, owns Sweet Potato Sensations, but that healing work you're doing with Black women, grieving, losing mothers, losing sons, losing husbands and loved ones in the streets of Detroit, which I've been doing for quite some time. And I'd love for you to speak to that and the work that you're doing as an institution builder. But thank you.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Good.
All right. I'm also very excited and humbled to be here. I'm born and raised in Fellowship Chapel, so it's always pretty fresh to sit on this side of the table like this. So thank you, Reverend Anthony, and thank you, Lady Monica, for asking me. So I guess I want to be kind of quick just because I know we have to get to the rest of everyone else too. But in 2013, I wheeled my fiance into the hospital for what I did not know would be the last time. And there was a group of girls off to the side of the emergency room, and there was 3 of them, and they were screaming, crying. And they ran out the room, and they said, he's dead, he's gone. And in that moment, I'm holding onto this wheelchair, and I thought to myself, where do those girls go to get support? That's a baby mama, that's a side chick, that's girlfriend, not the wife.
Yeah.
Where do they go? They go home, back to the block, wherever they are, and they just continue with no support, with nothing. Okay, so my fiance passed in November 26, 2013, and when I got to a better place to be able to really be able to honor that and own that a little bit differently, I wanted to create a space for women of color that are experiencing grief. You cannot tell me that black women or black people in general are not experiencing loss on a magnitude every single day. Not just a physical loss to a person, but services, homes, jobs, water.
Come on, Etta.
You know what I'm saying? People that just compounds that grief. And so we're not talking about it. I believe that black women wear the white. We go to the water, we pray, we light candles and burn incense. We fix the pound cake and the fruit punch, and we bathe babies and nurse babies and clean up husbands and lawns, and we take garbage out and kill spiders and take people to school and caregive people and all these different kind of things. But where do we go? Where do we go when we're bending to almost broken?
Yes.
Where do we go? I went to grief groups. I've been to Gilda's Club. I've been to Angela Hospice. I've been way out to Northville to some church somewhere. And there are no black people. I'm the only one. None. No people of color. I'm the only one. I don't wish my situation on anyone else. But you want to me too sometimes. You want somebody that stands with you. So every first and third Monday at our family bakery, Sweet Potato Sensations, I host with a friend of mine named Patrice Lucas from Coffee with a Counselor. She's our certified mental health professional on staff. Nice. And we do Where Do Black Women Go to Grieve? It's important. And women come from all over the place. They're really, I know there's probably some other grief groups happening in certain places. Sometimes they do it at certain times of the year, but grief happens every day, all throughout the day, and we need that kind of support. And I've seen women from all over the place that have lost a little bit of everything. Sometimes it's very recent, so sometimes it's been 20 or 30 or 40 years. And if you don't deal with it, how can you be a part, an effective part of the movement?
Let's go.
We're losing people every single day, and we have to, white people are not the only people that could go to Bali, to the temple to grieve. Like, we got to go somewhere, somewhere. And the church is good too, but sometimes you need a physical place for people to rally around you and show you that support. So that's what we do every first and third Monday, and it's super important because people want to see someone that looks like them. You don't want to have to explain who you are already to somebody, to a doctor or someone that does not look like you, that don't even speak the same language you speak, that does not understand. Women come to the group and say, I had a doctor, he doesn't even speak English. And I'm trying to talk to him about how I'm feeling. So there's several different layers to the important work that we have to do as black people. And some people are passing the water out, some people making the phone calls, some people are marching, some people are counseling, some people are watching the babies. We all got a role. So at this moment, being on the ground level, that's what my role is. I do a lot of other different things in Detroit in general, but this is some very important work, dealing with women that are experiencing loss, and also dealing with women under 40 that have lost their person, that may not have been physically married to somebody, that need validation for that hurt and that loss that they're experiencing.
Thank you, Etta. Naturally fly. Yes, Tatiana.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tatiana Brandt, and I am what is considered a serial entrepreneur. So I own 2 businesses that people know of. The first is called Infused PR and Events, and we are a PR and event planning agency. And based on my personal passion and love for the city of Detroit, our entire roster, except for two new ones, all consist of Detroit-based organizations that are building our city. So they range from the Detroit Land Bank Authority to the Motown Museum to Crane's Detroit Business to Duggan for Detroit, M1 Rail. I actually just got done training my staff that works for M1. Essentially, I have that company. My second company is called Flash Delivery, and it's Detroit's first on-demand food delivery service. So basically, you place your order, and the food arrives within an hour. And it's a tech startup company. And so what I do is I create and build businesses that creates opportunities for my people. Yeah. If you look at my team, my staff, it's consisted of us. And that's a blessing for me. And on the reverse side of that, when it comes to me going into these meetings and serving on various boards, the mayor appointed me to the board of directors for the DEGC. When I'm sitting at these tables, I make it my personal responsibility to make sure that our interests are being kept in mind. And so that's essentially what I do, is I try to move the needle, create opportunities, but beyond that, serve as light and inspiration to other young people. There are times where people will see me on social media, or they'll hear me on the radio, and they'll see me in my Flash Delivery shirt. And, it'll be young men, young girls saying, "Oh, I heard you on the radio. Like, I'm so happy to see that's the sister that owns it." Different things like that, that I really do. I have, based on our drivers, based on my team leads for my PR company, these are all young people who I know see something in me and know that they can do it. I left my job at 20, I think I was actually 24. I was working at the Palace Sports and Entertainment. Prior to that, I worked for the Taubman Company's world headquarters, and my first job out of college was working for the Detroit Super Bowl host committee when it was here in Detroit. And so based on having that corporate experience and then being able to take that and leverage that and start my own company at the age of 24 is a feat. But to me, it's an example to others that they can do it. I always encourage them, before you do that, make sure you got a plan. Make sure you have some money saved up, because on the reverse side of that, I'm all about wealth and financial stability. I'm also an investor in an angel fund there's one other there's two other African Americans, but we all know that everything is about your network. And that is one thing that I am very blessed to be able to have, is a very strong network that has allowed me to build my businesses. But through that, we fund women-owned businesses. And on this board, or on my fellow investors, thank you. My fellow investors are like Florine Mark's granddaughter and Sam Bernstein's daughter. And these are individuals that I would not interact with on an everyday basis. But collectively, we were brought together, we've put our money together, and we are taking this money and we invest in other businesses. And there's people that you and I know, we all interact with. They have no idea that I'm who's giving their businesses money. And I don't say anything to them, but they got my vote, and I go on and make sure everybody else's vote goes in their favor. And so for me, that's really what it is. There's times where I'm exhausted. When I say exhausted, I mean like completely exhausted. And I'm like, God, what am I doing? And I just pray for my strength, because I don't know how I'm going to do it half the time, but it comes together, and, my team and I end up killing it. And so, I was actually talking to Tommy, and I was like, dang, I'm like, I got to step it up. Like, I'm not woke enough. But, ultimately, as you shared, we all have our roles. And for me, I know my role is doing exactly what I'm doing, which is using the blessings, using the brain power, using my network to basically put these pieces together and bring up other people along the way. So that's me.
And being comfortable with having wealth. No, it's important that Black people are okay with making money.
Yes, and so on that note, one of my mentors is here. He's on the board of directors. He actually left. Is Greg Jackson, and he is my best friend's. She and I went to school together. We met freshman year. Like within the first week, freshman year of high school, and she's been my best friend ever since. And, you know, growing up, yeah, you got your auntie and your hootie, they all got money and they all got their businesses. But growing up with his daughter and him mentoring us the way that he did is I know why I am the way that I am. The business sense that he instilled in us, I remember I would go to the house and the living room would be full of change. And it would be the change from the vending machines at his car dealerships, and we would have to put them all in those things, and that was college fund money. And it was things like that that he instilled in us, starting small. He had a cookie shop, and Mrs. Jackson started that, like, I think down in Morris Brown. So just knowing that it takes these small little pieces to build your empire. So when you talk about wealth, I'm trying to be like Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, Prestige Cadillac, shout out. That's where I got my car from. All right. So we're going to keep moving. Most of you know Donnell White. I don't think I have to introduce you, so please take it away. And talk about, and I remember when I met him, I was mad at him because he was getting an award, and I was hosting, I don't know, was it 30 under 30 then or 40 under 40 something? And but he had been doing like 12 things that day, and he showed. I was like, who is this Donnell White? And my boy Khalid says the future of the NAACP. So I'm really honored to have known you this long now because we go back now some years, but just really proud, and watching you grow has been amazing. And would love to hear whatever you have to say at all times, and just look forward to even more growth from you and helping to lead this Detroit chapter of the NAACP. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you to Reverend Anthony, the shepherd of this house, for his continued visionary leadership. They say the revolution will not be televised, but apparently it is being streamed on social media. And so this is a testament to where we are in time. And so I'm appreciative to be a part of this panel with this caliber of panelists. To First Lady Monica Anthony, I know what it takes to put together events. And so I'm appreciative to your leadership and organization. So I serve as the executive director for the Detroit NAACP. As an association and certainly as a branch, we are alive and well. Yeah. We continue to serve as the flagship branch in the entire association, the largest not just by membership numbers, but by fundraising capacity, programmatic capacity, and staffing capacity. And so we are currently undergoing a national listening tour, which kicked off right here in the city of Detroit just this past Thursday. And so we have new national leadership in our national chairman, Mr. Leon Russell, who hails from Florida, and our new interim president and CEO, who's Derek Johnson, the Mississippi State Conference NAACP president, who just by happenstance is originally from the city of Detroit. And it's interesting how they try to say can't nothing come out of Detroit, but everywhere you look, everywhere you go, people want to know how y'all do it down in Detroit. And so Detroit is infused throughout the association. Currently, Reverend Anthony has been reelected to the National Board of Directors, giving life and breath back to the religious affairs component of the organization. And so we are alive and well. We're focusing on what we call our 6 game changers. First is economic sustainability, meaning that we care about jobs, training, and procurement opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses. Second is one of our hallmark issues, and that's education. And while governors get so much of the conversation and the airtime, it's much more than that. We are still concerned about the widening gap of funding between urban and suburban schools, the continuing technological divide between our kids and suburban kids, the quality of curriculum that our kids are being offered, the safety of not only the environment in the schools, but the physical edifices of our schools. So education, again, one of our hallmark issues. Third would be our criminal justice umbrella. We are working diligently about our young people being gunned down in the streets of America. We are still concerned about the rising prison population rates with people of color, particularly young men, but watch out, young African-American women are on the rise entering the prison system. The recidivism rates, and I can go on and on. You know the issues with criminal justice. Health and healthcare access is our next umbrella. So we are promoting our Healthy Active Lifestyle Initiative. It's okay to put the chicken under. I know we had fried chicken today, but it's okay to put the chicken under the stove sometime. It don't always have to go on top. Drink a little bit more water. The sweet tea is good, but it's a pitcher of water on your table. And encouraging all the way from our young people getting active 30 minutes a day to our seniors with managing prescriptions and having a healthy diet, which promotes elongating your life. So that's our health umbrella. Of course, another hallmark issue, voter empowerment and civic engagement. Every election cycle, we have our Take Your Souls to the Polls efforts, which is a registration component, education, mobilization, and lastly, voter protection on election day. That's our voter empowerment work. And lastly, which is apropos for this panel discussion, is youth engagement. We are actively continuing to engage the young people. I know we get the stigma of being the NAACP, and if you go to the convention, you know, you see our seasoned members, but believe it or not, the NAACP is alive and well. Our youth councils are busting at the seams across the country. Our youth and college divisions are actively organizing to change their conditions on college campuses across this country. And we are actively seeking those who might be on the sunset side of the millennial umbrella like myself to get re-engaged back to the movement. And I'll end on this note, Jessica. It's not a new conversation. Right. For us to try to adopt this narrative that they're trying to, you know, if you read The Art of War, there's all these tactics on how you divide and conquer. And they are absolutely trying to divide and conquer our movements. And so I'm glad to see my brother Andre on the panel from Black Lives Matter, because they try to say, well, the NAACP and Black Lives Matter don't get along together, or you can't coexist, or Detroit 300 to Ferry can't work with the NAACP is too active and is not, you know, NAACP is getting too old. Absolutely couldn't be further from the case. Absolutely could not be any further from the truth. We are alive and well, and we'll work with anybody who's trying to move the cause for our community forward. And we oftentimes don't advertise what we're doing and how we're doing it and who we're doing it with and who we give resources to be successful, but that is your NAACP actively working to encourage and promote. If we didn't have a Black Lives Matter movement erupting across the streets of America, we would be doing something wrong as a community if young people weren't excited and actively working to change their conditions, because it's historical. It's historical that you find that, and I'll touch on a little bit later if we get an opportunity on how the historical context on how movements have evolved and new movements have erected, but institutions like the NAACP have continued to be viable every step along the way.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Donnell White. And just to add to, you know, earlier, Dr. Earl Henderson talked about the takeover of Wayne State University, you know, right? And I wasn't there yet, actually. I was actually too young to be there. You know, to fair, you thought I was there, but I was taking notes. And in '94, when I was a student there and co-director of the, you know, we had co-presidents of the NAACP and on the executive board there. Well, as a little person, you know, it was the Honorable Joanne Watson and Reverend Anthony who we called on to say, hey, we want to take over Wayne State University again, and because the African Studies Department was there, but of course they're trying to dismantle it as soon as they created it, and they didn't have a Martin Luther King holiday, and so we took over the Student Center building, took over David Adamanti's office with about 300 students, and we boycotted it. We learned from y'all, you know, but it was them that showed up for us, the student chapter of the NAACP, when I was just 21 at the time, maybe, and they still come to our rescue. So I always correct young people in that you can't just judge your organization because you think it's outdated. You know, like if you not on what you said earlier was just amazing. Like if you don't, this is not your grandma. The civil rights movement is so disrespectful to the people that died, so that we could actually be here, so we can exist on college campuses and not be killed. You know, Sonia Sanchez and those people, you know, getting their lives, you know, were in danger trying to teach Paul Robeson, right? You know, it wasn't like a small thing to teach about what Black people and scholars did in this country. So thank you, Donnell, because you helped me get back up into the Detroit NAACP single-handedly. It was Donnell White. I mean, look, he's charismatic, he's good looking, and he's talking about something. I said, okay, I'm back down with the NAACP. So, you know, but we need that. You know, I already had a relationship with Reverend Anthony, but you definitely brought a different energy into the organization now, and so I respect you and appreciate you for that. So we're going to keep going with Tommy Walker. Yes, from Black. Yeah, Detroit versus everybody. I believe in it.
How you doing? You got it?
Okay, well, how you doing today? My name is Tommy Walker. I'm the creator, designer of Detroit versus Everybody brand, the iconic Detroit versus Everybody brand.
Yes.
So, I'm on a lot of panels, a lot of them about, like entrepreneurship and, building brands and businesses. That's like my area. But just to give you a little background about myself, I am a cast technician. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I went to Burton International School, and I also did 2 years at Wayne State. I didn't graduate. I jumped out to pursue my entrepreneurial goals after 2 years at Wayne State. I am a graphic designer by trade. So while I was in school, I was actually I was in my career. I branded a lot of artists. I was working with Def Jam, Interscope, Jive at the time when I was actually in school. Like I would be in school and couldn't take calls from labels, So, make a long story short, because of being a designer, I was able to travel a lot and meet a lot of different people. In 2012, I was on a business trip. So in 2012, it was the end of the situation that was going on with our mayor at the time, Kwame Kilpatrick. And, regardless of whatever situation was going on, what I saw in that situation was the importance of Detroit. So, me being a Detroiter and now just, actually getting out of the city a lot and just seeing how things are a lot different and actually seeing the impact that Detroit has on the world, it was eye-opening to me, seeing how much the world looks at Detroit and how much we influence them. And, the actual situation was, I remember being in my apartment, I stayed in Great Haven down off of Dickerson, on Jefferson. And I remember being in my apartment packing and watching television, seeing Kwame. Then getting on an airplane, going to California, getting to the hotel, turning on the television and seeing Kwame. And something just connected in my head that, wow, Detroit is a lot more important than I had ever thought, Okay, so fast forward, get back to the city, and it's still going on. And at that time, I was going through a lot to where my mind had transferred to, I need to be doing more. I was working with a lot of different artists in the industry, and I was doing their brands, but it was cool. I wanted something bigger, so I purchased a screen printing company so that I could actually take care of their merchandising and things of that nature. So that actually went under. We actually found out that that's a very expensive business to be in, and we wound up being a failing screen printing business, So went on ahead and, my best friend who I was doing a company with, he went back to Blue Cross Blue Shield. Here I am, had dropped out. This is all I had, brand, keep on going. So at that time, I took the material, took the equipment and was doing stuff for schools and churches and different teams of that nature. And bam, had the idea of Detroit versus Everybody, okay? So here we are, 2012, 5 years, it's 2015. 2017 now, we have 5 store locations. We employ 32 people from the city of Detroit. And it's, though I'm up here, they should be up here. It's really kind of crazy, you guys talking to me, but I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for them, And I spend a lot of time thinking about that. Like, I started it, but you guys are as important as I am. You know what I mean? Yeah. There you go.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We're going to open it up to questions too, but I want to ask you, just as a person who creates a brand, and as a person that I've created brands and had to fight for brands that people try to take from me, because Detroit, really, we create everything, and then people steal it, and then try to create other things out of it, and pretend like they created something. Right. And I know that your brand went so international that it became somebody's city versus everybody. Yeah. And that's like learning how to be a black business owner. But I just want to applaud you, because as we see the takeover of our city and the colonization of downtown and the ignoring of our neighborhoods until white folks move a business and suddenly it's hip to be on Finko because there's a coffee shop or whatever, right? thank you for the 5 locations, you know, make it 20 locations.
I'm not going to stop.
Yeah, all of that. I mean, because entrepreneurship is a part of the revolution. Like, if we're not talking about economic empowerment, then we're not talking about anything. We got to have money. We have to own the buildings. Can't just be renting. Like, everybody mad about Henry the Hatter moving, but Henry the Hatter been renting for 30 years. You know, at some point, you got to go and get a building and own the land, right? So just thank you for that. But I would love for you to talk about how you felt when you saw your brand go global, and if your money wasn't a part of that. Like,
if my money wasn't a part of that?
Yeah, like if you know New York versus Brooklyn versus everybody, you know, like I would love you to speak to that.
All right, so when we registered Detroit versus everybody, we also registered versus everybody. So right.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you. We did, and that was. I kind of knew what was gonna happen. Now, this is the thing. I didn't know how. It's like football. I didn't know how dirty it was.
Oh, it's dirty.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I had never had nothing. I never had a project that had connected like that. Yes. To find out that there's a whole world of people that are just like, you know, looking for the next thing to that's their job. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like that was just like mind blowing to me. Like you're not even taking the initiative to come up with anything original. You're just waiting for the next original thing so that you can, you know, like I'm talking about people I'm talking about we'll send cease and desist out or something. Yes. And they'll be like, you know, come back, you know, in a secret. Thank you, man. I fed my family for 2 years off of this. You know what I'm saying? Like it's really crazy. Or like, you know, just one situation. It's a guy over in Toronto, you know, smart businessman, I guess, you know what I'm saying? But he's on Canada looking over in the States, and all of his entire brand consists of brands that pop in the States. So like my biggest lawsuit right now is with a guy in Toronto who registered my stuff 2 weeks before my Canadian registration went through. You know what I'm saying?
It's real, yes.
So it's like, it's dirty. And it's annoying, and and you know,
we should have coffee. We should talk about it.
No, I mean,
really, because I dealt with it. Because I don't know, been doing Black Women Rock for 13 years, so I have dealt with Beverly Bond and Black Girls Rock. Okay, I had to deal with that. Okay, and I would have loved to have talked to you. Yeah, so you could have taught me some things, so I could have maybe not been in court and dealing with her with lawyers.
See, so the situation that I'm learning is, and I'm learning every day. You know what I'm saying? Like even every time when I'm speaking, it's like, hey, I'm learning. I'm a student of this, but I'm protected from the big boys. But the ones selling them out the trunk, you know, I lose more time and energy and money trying to find them than, you know, just proceeding with my goals. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of like have been beat into submission with the what they say is the best form of flattery. The imitation is the best form of flattery. It's like okay, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
okay.
Humility to a degree.
You know, like because is it because I gotta accept it? You know what I'm saying? Or is it because do I have to sit here and think of myself as a trendsetter, and do I need to shape my? Because I don't respect that as a creative. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a creative, if I inspired you, that's fine. But don't take it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's Detroit versus everybody, okay, cool, that's cool. But now I'm in Ohio. Let's say Ohio versus us all or something. Like, that's a little bit more, you know, put your spin on it. Put your energy. Don't just take it from me. But even with that, I lose a lot more time fighting that than just, you know, going on and creating the next new thing or focusing on what I want to do. But the best thing that I did was create that trademark.
Smart.
Was get that trademark, you know, and I'm grateful for that. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. We want to open it up, I think, right? Can we open it up to questions, people? Yeah. So if there's a microphone, am I going to be the microphone lady, or you got me?
I'll do it.
Okay. So if anyone has questions, we have institution builders here. We have young people here who are on the ground as activists, organizers. Yes. Who's got their hand up? Reverend Anthony? All right. Are you a millennial? Yeah. I'm not a millennial. I date millennials.
I'm whatever I need to be. So
no, that's right.
Let me just say this. Come on. Let me just say this. First of all, I appreciate all of what you said and your presentation. I just want to ask one question. Because, and I think Tatiana connected with a point that I want to bring out. She's not going to do what Teferi does. Teferi is not going to do what Tommy Walker does. He's not going to do what Andre does. But everybody's doing something. Now, you talked about wealth. The title of this is Millennials for the Movement. What are you doing to further the movement? You indicated you are using your position. You are making money. You are meeting with the Bernsteins, they're on your board, and everybody else. We know who they is. You are making certain that black people get the business and get toe off. Am I hearing what you're saying correct?
That is correct.
You are saying that part of what you are doing is making sure that, see, you're not necessarily going to be out there on a soapbox. You can, but that ain't what you do. What you do is get paid. But in getting paid, you making sure that we get paid, that we have an opportunity to build an organization. And see, that's helping to institutional building. You're helping Tommy by virtue of employing people, etc. But you had a brand, Detroit. That's people respond to signs, symbols, and images. You put a sign. You got a brand, Detroit versus everybody. Therein lies a message, which helps move us. So I guess I just want you all, as you think about this, moving us from this point, how you're using your opportunity and your position to take us to the next level, to make your mark. And I heard some of that, but I just want to make that point and to have you focus there.
Well, I can touch in on that. For example, okay, we have a new campaign that we just launched, which is called Don't Complain, Contribute, right? Okay, so that's something that's very dear to me because it's like, yeah, identify the problem, right? Okay, but what I've seen is the constant talking about the problem. So when do we draw the line to talking about the problem and talking about, you know, solutions to the problem? You see what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to do is deep for you to say that. I've never heard that, like, creatively, the signs and symbols like that, you know, in pictures, like, that's what, you know, it's like subconsciously and consciously, that's what we react to. So what I have been, like, really secretly trying to do is find a way to make positivity cool using the platform that I've created, you know, because we, the millennials, they react to, like, you know, what we like to call juice, you know what I'm saying? Or like, you know, it's they'll, you know, you have to kind of like trick us into, you know, supporting something that if you said it, you know, directly, will go above their head. So it's will go above our head. You know, I'm in there. So it's one of those things to where you kind of have to, let me say, what I have been doing is trying to find ways to cleverly place a message into the medium that I chose, which is fashion, you know. So that's it.
Tatiana, did you want to respond since Reverend Anthony called?
Certainly. And so in addition to getting money, giving opportunities, whatever you want to call it, I also do a lot of mentoring. So I mentor at Cody High School. I have a classroom of 15 young ladies, both at Cody and Westside Academy. And basically we have monthly sessions where at the beginning of the school year, so we're actually getting ready for it, we put together pretty much curriculum for our programming. So it goes everywhere from budget planning to hygiene to getting ready for prom, helping them try to get in, what's the program called that the mayor has? Detroit Young Talent, is that the name of it? Grow Detroit Young Talent. So getting them their applications together so they can have summer jobs, just a wide range of things. but it's really my work, in addition to speaking and mentoring and things of that sort, is the program that I do through Women of Tomorrow at the 2 high schools.
Fantastic.
I was going to chime in also and say a lot of moving forward is owning your own, and I think we talked about that for a couple seconds. And with on the other side of what I do in the daytime is sweet potato sensations, and I'm more so of the face people see for our family-owned business, and we make a conscious effort almost on a daily basis. People come in and ask for business advice and want to start a business, want to start a restaurant, want to bake some cookies, want to do a lot of different things. And on an entrepreneurial standpoint, we talk to different families and mothers and people that want to open and own their own thing, because a lot of times in the African American community, we didn't have those business conversations at the dinner table like other cultures have had. We don't talk about business and owning our own properties and owning our own things, and maybe even legitimizing what we're doing in our home for the last 20, 30, and 40 years, and babysitting kids for a long time and making dinners and a lot of other things. So people are now wanting to take what they've been doing in their home outside of the business, outside of their home, and really see if that's something that could work for them. Especially in 2008, 2009, when in the middle of the downfall of the economy and whatever you want to call it, and people are really looking at what their side hustles and hobbies were and trying to see if that could make room for them. So I think a lot of that is, just like I said earlier, we all have a space at the table. We all have something that we're good at. Everybody is not on the forefront and doing certain types of things. So being able to usher people into their dreams and into their passion, something that they're good at, something that our family business does all the time.
Thank you. Yeah, Donna.
I wanted to add one thing. One thing that I noticed amongst my colleagues, well, some of my colleagues, not everyone, is that there is this push we'll call it demonization of those who are not on the forefront, who are not protesting. And one thing I've always said when I'm in those conversations is that everyone has their role. And I recognize that, yeah, I am on the forefront protesting and stuff like that, even though sometimes I'm very scared to be on the forefront protesting. I'm an introvert. I'm a quiet person. I'm not the one to be out yelling and stuff like that. But my space, my opportunity to do it has brought about the chance for me to be out in the front. So I do it. But I think one of the best things that I do in my work is in the classroom. Really changing little kids' minds. I teach 11th grade English this year, and I'll be teaching Audre Lorde. I'll be teaching James Baldwin. I'll be teaching, James Baldwin Johnson.
Oh, I'm messing with you. Okay.
These are all things that are part of the movement. We need black teachers. We need black teachers who are unafraid and unapologetic about their blackness. So in addition to all these individuals here who have gone to Cass Tech, that's a little bit of shade. I didn't graduate from Cass Tech, but I wanted to make certain that all my kids have that kind of rigorous and black informed curriculum that's going to help them realize who they are, and before they can become a Tommy Walker or Donnell White or Etta Fly, they have to first learn how to read. They got to first learn how to do math, and the revolution really starts in the classroom. The revolution starts with faith and prayer. So that's my side
Can we take
this revolution.
The question over here, please?
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Wheeler. I recognize what all of you all do at the table, and just in the spirit of the last 50 years, and this being the anniversary, just looking 50 years ago was the rebellion. People woke up and decided to do something. Right now, we're very aware of what the issues are, and we're very aware that everyone has their thing that they do that's good. In my opinion, if we're separate though, if we're not at the table at the same level, then that's a breeding ground for hate, and hate is like what really holds us down, and we hate each other, and we don't want to see them doing it because they're not doing it the way we think we should be doing it or it ought to be done. So I'm saying, how can we challenge ourselves to, first of all, bring everybody in, because it's too many, it's not too many, it's never too many, it's a lot of good efforts going on, separate efforts. even right here in the city of Detroit, a lot of people that care about the issues that we care about. It's more of us than it is people that don't care about those issues. So how do we challenge ourselves to bring those people full circle? And then how do we, is it hiding the vegetables? I think it's enough people that actually like Mr. Walker was just saying, that we don't have to tuck it as much as we might have had to tuck it before, because people don't even realize what they care about until they've been introduced to it. Quite yet. That's personal for me, because I didn't realize what I cared about until I was in the position to do something or had to do something about it, and I woke up. So how do we challenge ourselves to bring that full circle and make people who already are activists in the mind, they just haven't been activated yet? Like, how do we do that? How do we, in y'all opinions?
Yes. Right.
First of all, I want to say thank you, brother. First of all, you presented yourself very well, and your argument and your question was very well elaborated and thought out, so thank you. First of all, I want to say that the first thing you need to do is be a part in the community, bring people in to have conversations. So, for instance, I've never met Tommy Walker. I never met Donnell White. Of course, I know her from back when Wayne State times. But I think that it's very important that we come together and we talk, and we hash out. We're not afraid to lean into disagreement. Donnell White and I might think very differently as to strategy to rid this country of white supremacy. But unless we come together and talk and lean into that disagreement, we're not going to be able to move forward in unity and as organizers. So, yeah.
And I want to really celebrate the good things that are being done. And there are so many of us doing what you're saying. And this is what we miss. Like I heard the sister say, we don't have the conversations around the table about black business. We always have. I mean, Black Wall Street was born out of us. Yeah. We look at Paradise Valley, which was really a community full of black folks who had business interests. I mean, you still see that. That's why Tommy Walker is who he is, and there's so many other black businesses throughout the country and in the community, such as yours, Sister Etta, that's doing outstanding work. So I just want to celebrate and acknowledge and lift up the things that we are doing. There are so many brothers and sisters in the community, Brother Jeremiah, that are doing just what you said. I mean, we come together all the time. I mean, I have a collective of maybe a coalition of maybe 50 brothers and sisters who represent, 25 or more different organizations, and we mobilize and move at any given moment. At the height of Detroit 300, we could call 1,000 people and get in the streets quick and make things happen. That's because there was a coalition of us, and although we may have had profound ideological and philosophical disagreements, we were on the same page when it came to not fighting. I got to remember what Ms. Barfield taught us. When it came to organizing and standing up and promoting peace, we all had that in common. Now, how we went about doing it, there were some profound differences amongst us, but we were all together, and we're still together to this very day. I'm not officially with Detroit 300, but every time I put a call out, they come. They come because that's still my organization. Those are still my brothers and sisters. And although we have some ideological differences, and we have had some over the years, we're still brothers and sisters. And it's on those principles, the principle of peace and the fact that we are brothers and sisters that we build upon. So I would say to you, a lot of what you have to do to activate the activists in mind is to invite them out. Yep. Right? Make them stakeholders of this work, right? And also recognize what they do very well, or find out what it is they have an interest in, and give them an opportunity to do that work with you, right? And not marginalize them and disrespect, right? Their gifts or their perspectives or their ideals. But I think that we really are doing a very, very good job of that, because so many of us work so well together right now.
And also just to go to them as well, like inviting them to come out, but also going in. So, I mean, you're young, you should be up inside Detroit Public Schools, without question, in front of all those kids. And it's a lot of red tape and silliness to get into these schools. And I remember when I first came home to Detroit after being gone for 12 years, my first thing was like, well, how do I get in front of these kids? You know, and I just went to the principals on my own and said, hey, I'm Jessica Caremore, Google me, and I want to talk to the kids. And eventually they figured out, okay, now I get asked for every career day and every can you come? And I'm talking about running a publishing house and what's that like and blah, blah, blah. But it's also about going to where the people are and being uncomfortable. You know, a lot of times in situations like this is a very comfortable setting. So finding spaces that are maybe not so comfortable, talking to those brothers and sisters, things at Teferi, you know, everybody's not going to do that. I'm actually comfortable on the block. Every sister isn't, you know. I'm comfortable on the front line. I'm comfortable in the streets. Still, even though I'm a grown up, I go because my son can see that this is the work that he has to do too. So that's not everybody can wear all those hats. But I think you just need to be feel empowered and you continue to do what you're doing. Is it Live, Breathe, Detroit? Is that your company? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we should all be buying his T-shirts. You know, it's like, you know, we should be not just talking, like we should buy how y'all bought Dr. Boyd's books and had him sign it, support the brothers' shirts, go to Tommy to get the shirts, don't get it from the bootleg man out the trunk, you know, come buy my books if you don't have them yet, shame on you, catch up, buy my books, buy my More Black Press, support the press. Publishing is thankless work. They don't want to publish black scholars. They don't want to call black poets. They want to call us spoken word artists. So you got to fight for institution builders because without us there is no movement. And yes. Somebody, Donnell, did you want to?
No, I was going to chime in. Jeremiah, you're absolutely right. And I appreciate what you said about activists waiting to be activated.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it's inherent in who we are as a people. We're African people, which is a collaborative, a part of one body. And so in our movement, I don't think there will be a monolithic solution, but it's going to be brothers like you, organizations like the NAACP, entrepreneurs coming together. When I think about the history of our movement, you know, where would we be if not for a Hella Berry Fonte and Kathy Hughes and those who were pumping money into the movement while Martin and Malcolm and those were in the streets and organizing and doing their thing. And so I don't think we have to, you know, be lockstep where, again, there's this narrative that, well, if all the black people ain't moving in one direction, y'all ain't moving, where I believe we can all be moving in multiple directions because there are multiple threats against us as a community. Yes. And so we have to fight on many fronts. The challenge becomes I think those of old, and I wasn't there at the table, but from what I hear, older stories that you could tell if you was a fly on the wall on the fights that was had. But when the doors opened, it was a unified front about what direction they were trying to move our community in. And I think that's going to be our challenge is how do we put personality and profit aside to move our people forward. And so we have to continue as organizations, as leaders, to provide opportunities for entrepreneurs, athletes. You know, it's not enough to judge Kaepernick and all these other ones and say, well, this is what you ain't doing, but not giving them an opportunity to say this is what you can do and how you can join in the movement. So I think it's going to be us working on many fronts to continue to move that agenda forward. And somebody might not like the NAACP, but they might get down with Black Lives Matter. They might not like either one of those, but they'll go march with the brothers and sisters in the street for Detroit 300. So I think it's a much complex effort than just moving in one direction united.
So one last question, and I took her because she's a young lady from Atlanta, very intelligent, articulate, and a millennial. And you know what we mean when we say that word. I'm sure the baby boomers didn't like being called baby boomers and Generation X. But one last question. We need to wrap up, and we're going to do that once we conclude.
Thank you. I'll try to be pretty quick. We know in history a lot of times the efforts of black women have been erased through the different movements and the businesses that we've created. And I see a lot of millennials, whether I'm in Atlanta, up here in Detroit, in Boston, outside DC and PG County, a lot of young men are coming together and they're doing a beautiful thing of creating their dreams, creating businesses, creating movements, but a lot of times I see them still leave out women. Or when they do want to pull us in, they only want us to be the people, to be their secretaries, to write their notes.
Ooh.
How have you all, as men, tried to change this, brought women on in leadership positions, or even motivated their businesses and brought people to support their causes?
Yes, that question.
Well, see, and this speaks to what Dr. Henderson was talking about in regards to understanding the history of a thing, understanding our struggle. When you understand our struggle, that position is preposterous, right? It's ridiculous. It doesn't make really good sense. Even though misogyny and sexism has always existed, within organizations and within struggle. Black women have always been a part of leadership in every organization. In CORE, black women, SNCC, black women, you don't even really understand or even see King without Ella Baker, right? And understanding her work, especially in regards to the voter registration drives in the South. You don't even know what SNCC is if you don't have Ella Baker, right? I'm saying, so Diane Nash, of course, and her wonderful work. Anna Julia Cooper and her scholarship. Queen Mother Moore, in regards to coining the term New African, right? Dr. Henderson, I'm saying, so Miss Barfield, for instance, I would consider her the mother of the urban peace and justice movement. I'm saying, so for me, organizing without women is ridiculous. In many cases, sisters have started a lot of this work, and I'm just grateful that they've allowed me to be a part of it. Like, I don't even think about stepping out here without Mama Ma, when she probably gets a little irked with me because I'm always trying to get her involved and engaged, and I'm begging her to be a part of whatever we're doing, because I understand in order for it to be successful, we have to be together. And for our work in regards to urban peace and justice work, so many of the victims are black women. How dare we sit back and tell a sister you can't be a part of getting justice and peace for yourself when 70% of our victims are African-American women and 80% of the victimizers are black men. So it's a ridiculous model to embrace or to promote, to sit back and say that only black men can organize for peace when the peace that we're fighting for is primarily for black women, right? So I'm with you. I think that any organization that does not want to embrace sisters being an active part of it, especially in leadership, is an organization you don't have to be a part of. You go find another one, or you go start one, or if it's one that you feel like you got to be a part of, you fight. Like many sisters have done over the years, and you find brothers like me who will partner up with you. I'm down with you. You're willing to fight. We can address sexism within the organization. Detroit 300, one of the reasons why we had some challenges is because I fought hard, and I really believed in black women being a part of the leadership and allowing black women who wanted to be in the streets, walking, soldiering, patrolling, right, engaging the brothers and sisters. I felt like it was ridiculous to not allow them to do that. When you had other folks in the organization who may have came from a Nation of Islam perspective and ideology, and they didn't believe that women should be on the front line, so to speak, or out here engaging men in the community and patrolling. We had a fight there. It was a loving fight, but we had a fight, right? So I'm with you, and I align myself with the sisters because it was the sisters who were making that argument. They were saying, brother, we want to learn martial arts. We want to patrol. We want to carry. Those of us who are licensed to carry, we want to carry. We want to be able to engage brothers and sisters in the community, right? And I supported that. They found an ally in me. So those are the kind of things you want to do when you want to make sure your voice is heard, because your voice is a valuable voice and it's a necessary voice. And I will contend that we can't be successful at this work and free and educate and empower people unless we have your voice, hear your voice, and respect your voice.
Yeah. It's also about, yes, thank you. Please, can we clap? It's also about, as a black woman, though, you creating your own organizations, your own support network with other women that support women. I'm a woman that supports women's organizations and supports women entrepreneurs. Etta Fly and I work together on many levels for different things. So there is a support network as well, so that black women can find themselves, so that you don't have to just be looking for the men to assist, but also be just the leader. And my entire staff of Black on Rock is all black women on purpose, just to show that black women can actually work together and love each other and not be divas. And because we have that stereotype as well that black women can't organize together because we got some man in the middle that we fighting over or whatever, right? And so it's important that you also find black women organizations that support you. And it won't be. Anybody else want to speak to the brothers? Want to speak?
But I also wanted to bring into the space that black women do oftentimes not get credit for the work they have contributed. And part of the Black Lives Matter movement or the movement for Black Lives, has been to bring forth and say the name of these women who have put forth blood, sweat, and tears. For instance, Black Lives Matter, the organization, was started by 3 black queer women, saying their name, being able to bring them into the space. Charlene Carruthers is a national executive director for Black Youth Project, which is a black queer woman. So I think part of it is just really giving credit two black women. Ella Baker, people don't know about Ella Baker, but she was the backbone of both the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. So I think part of now is really giving credit to this work. They've been there, but now we need to start to change the conversation and let them take the lead and not be afraid and use misogyny as an excuse to both attack and also to lower the voices of these black women who have been so instrumental in our movements.
And I have to be careful about letting allow. Let me say this quickly. I have to be, and we all make this mistake because I'm a sexist in recovery, all right? I'm saying so.
You all are.
Right, right. I'm saying so we have to be careful. Ain't no letting allow. It's really about getting the hell out the way. Really, right? Because they're going to run you over eventually, So it's not even about letting and allow. So let us check that language, all right?
I agree. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to Teferi and Andre and Etta Fly and Tatiana, Donnell and Jamon Jordan, Tommy Walker. Please give them a round of applause for this organization. We do have a Freedom Institute survey we want you to fill out before you leave. It's very important so we can have feedback so they can continue to do these type of discussions and we know what you want. I think folks will be around for a minute, and thank you for coming out. Support, if people have things for sale, buy it all. You can start with my CDs right in front of me. I'm not kidding. And I love y'all. Black excellence at all times. Peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Let's give Jessica a hand for her moderating. Thank you, Jessica Caremore. Let's give our panel another round of applause. We thank you so much. We know that there's not enough time, but time is very valuable, and we appreciate all of that. I do want to thank you and to thank the volunteers who worked with us today for the Freedom Institute. Get in our hand, all the folk that helped us today. And as we did this morning, we are so pleased that Dr. Henderson came and also Professor Herb. I want to invite you out tomorrow again for the service that we'll have at 9:30. It'll be a powerful service for Men's Week culminating all of this. You're all invited, even those who don't regularly attend worship, but maybe God will bless you and you can bless us by your appearance. Say amen. And so, but I do want to, we presented in behalf of Dr. Ron Walters, in his name, the Critical Thinkers Award. We gave the award to Professor Herb Boyd this morning. We don't normally give out two awards, but because we have two critical thinkers here today, we gave Professor Herb one this morning, and we have one for Dr. Earl Henderson this afternoon. I want to present to Dr. Earl Henderson the Critical Thinkers Award from the Freedom Institute. Critical Thinkers Award presented to Dr. Earl Henderson for Critical Thinking in Critical Times, August 26, 2017. And in the words of Dr. King, nothing pains some people more than having to think. And he said it right there. So, Brother Earl, we appreciate you, man. Put this in a good way. Your people and our folks can always look at that and know that you are a critical thinker and that as a man or woman thinker, so are they. Amen. Thank you, brother. And we have a nice box for you. And if so we can take a picture. So you want to take a picture? Oh, okay. That's cool. However you want to do it. Okay. All right. Bless you, man. Thank you so much. Please leave your evaluations here. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thanks, brother. I know it wasn't going to be enough time. I know it won't be enough time. But... huh? Oh, yeah. Okay, let's take one with us. Right.
my little niecey. I'm gonna give you to them. No, I'm at the that little hotel